Chapter 2009. The second move. Zhuan Yuheng's body was suffused with purple Taoist light. In front of him, a giant handprint that could cover the sky and the sun was condensed again. However, unlike the first move, this palm seal seemed to contain a world within it, and it surged with the energy of all living beings in the world. Vaguely, there were all kinds of incomparably pure flames burning in it. The fire of faith. That was the embodiment of the power of all living beings operating to the extreme. On the pilgrimage platform of Kunlun ruins, Zhuan Yuheng used the power of all living beings to make him a sage. Now that he had reached the perfection of the Saint King realm, he had obviously integrated the power of all living beings into his own Tao field. This was undoubtedly terrible. Seeing this scene from a distance, Heng Xiao couldn't help being moved and excited. It was no exaggeration to say that in terms of the power of all living beings, no one in the whole cloud state could compare with Zhuan Yuheng. The core descendant of the universe Taoist court is really a legendary genius. Heng Xiao's heart trembled. Boom! Above the void, lightning flashed and thunder roared. Divine clouds flowed and turned into a scene of great destruction. All of this was caused by the power of Zhuan Yuheng's palm. At this moment, all the people in Xuanji sect were alarmed. Countless eyes were looking at this side. Seeing the sky-covering handprint, Lin Sun was calm. He waved his sleeves and flicked his fingers. Clang, clang, clang. Beams of Taishian sword qi swept out, sharp and dazzling, and pierced through the air. With a bang, the first Taishian sword qi exploded, but its power only made the handprint tremble slightly. Then, beams of Taishian sword qi exploded one after another, turning into dazzling light rain all over the sky. This handprint of Zhuan Yuheng was extremely overbearing. With the fire of faith and the Tao field integrated into it, it had the unparalleled momentum of killing gods and Buddhas who stood in its way. Bang! When the last beam of Taishian sword qi exploded, the handprint had already covered the place above Lin Sun's head. The situation was dangerous. But at this time, Lin Sun didn't even look at it and punched towards the sky. Sky-shaking punch. As soon as this punch, which was integrated with Lin Sun's Tao field, appeared, it was like a big abyss swallowing the sky, releasing a frightening, devouring power. Rumble, the palm print, and the fist energy collided, and it was like two small worlds colliding together, giving rise to an unparalleled torrent of energy. The nearby mountains and rivers trembled, and the many ancient formations scattered throughout the Tao sect of the four stars were activated, producing an obscure defensive power. Otherwise, the strength of such a battle would absolutely be able to destroy this incomparably divine mountain and river. This impossible. Suddenly, a sharp cry sounded. It was ZK and the other girls. They were originally fearless and calm, but at this moment, every one of them revealed a shocked expression and trembled. Because on the battlefield, as Lin Sun's fist force burst out and swept out, Zhuan Yuheng's shocking Mahamudra was not only blocked, but also being worn down and collapsed inch by inch. Within the palm print that seemed to contain Zhou Su, chaos broke out. The wish power of all living beings dimmed, and the flames of faith that were burning seemed to have been swept by a storm, continuously extinguishing. In the end, along with a rumbling sound, the large palm collapsed, and the energy contained within it was completely crushed by the fist energy, causing it to be obliterated and vanish without a trace. The faces of ZK and the other girls were filled with shock, and their expressions froze. This second move was the true embodiment of their young master's strength, but it had still been broken. Not bad at all. A person like you is bound to receive a lot of attention in the Central Earth Tao province. But I'm very curious. Why have I never heard of your name before? At this moment, Zhuan Yuheng also restrained his arrogance, and his expression became solemn. He had completely realized that he had encountered an extremely terrifying enemy this time. This surprised him, and also made him very astonished, because in the past, he did not know when such a character with heaven-defying battle strength had appeared in the Cloud Province. Not to mention that in recent years, The name Jean D was not on the All-Heaven King Sage list at all. The world is vast, and there are all sorts of strange things. There are still many things that you don't know, Lin Sun said casually. There's still one last move. If you still can't do anything to me, then it's my turn to make a move. His words caused ZK and the other girls to begin to feel nervous, and they could no longer be as calm as before. Even though they were maidservants by Zhuan Yiheng's side, every single one of them possessed unique and formidable natural talent and resources. Moreover, they'd followed by Zhuan Yiheng's side throughout the years, so they'd experienced a great deal and encountered numerous peerless geniuses of all shapes and sizes. Thus, their gazes were extremely experienced. Although they had only fought twice, they still realized that this Jin Duyi was absolutely a ruthless character, not inferior to their young master. Taking a deep breath, a touch of determination flashed in Zhuan Yuheng's eyes. Then I'll let you see my real ability. He suddenly hugged the air with his hands and repeatedly made a gesture in the air. Boom! The originally clear sky was covered with a layer of shimmering deep purple, and the mountains and rivers in all directions fell into a strange silence at this moment. And in front of Zhuan Yuheng, a 3-inch sword chi appeared. It was clean and translucent, as if it had been washed, but it emitted an incomparably grand and peerless sharpness. The most terrifying thing was that with the emergence of this wisp of sword chi, the void of heaven and earth, the momentum of all things in the mountains and rivers were all absorbed and integrated into the sword chi. Clang! The 3-inch sword chi suddenly rose explosively by an inch, and its might rose explosively along with this. On the other hand, the violet color that covered the sky grew even deeper and more terrifying. Shit! Heng Zhao's expression turned grim as he suddenly let out a long howl, and he ordered everyone in the Four Pearl Dao sect to not approach this area arbitrarily. At the same time, he suddenly flicked his sleeve, and the ancient restrictions that covered the nearby area were completely activated and circulated at full force. Heng Zhao finally felt slightly at ease after he did all of this, because Zhuan Yuheng's third move hadn't been truly executed, yet it caused him to feel a chill run down his spine. Without a doubt, this move was definitely Zhuan Yuheng's trump card, and it was boundlessly terrifying. Heng Zhao's scalp went numb because all of this wasn't the end. Clang! The wisp of sword chi before Zhuan Yuheng seemed as if it had been sealed. At this moment, it was being pulled out inch by inch, and it was reflected in the heavens and the earth. Every single inch it was pulled out caused its might to rise explosively by a great deal. In the end, even the heavens and the earth dimmed down, while Zhuan Yuheng's figure was drowned by the glow of that wisp of sword chi, causing him to become illusory. Everyone who witnessed this scene felt a stabbing pain in their hearts, and their spirits felt like they were being torn apart. This was because the aura released by this wisp of sword chi was simply too terrifying, and it seemed as if it could destroy the heavens and the earth and destroy everything. This continued until the sword chi condensed to 9 inches. Zhuan Yuheng's face turned pale, but his eyes were as bright as the sun, and he said in a low voice, "This move is called the 9-inch edge of Tao, and it's the embodiment of my lifetime's cultivation. Up until now, I've only used it twice. The first time, I killed 16 enemies of the same realm while I was at the peak of the early stage Saint King realm. The second time, I killed a quasi-emperor not long ago." His voice resounded through the heavens, and it revealed boundless disdain and murderous intent. "And you're the third opponent that made me use this move." When Zhuan Yuheng said this, Heng Zhao's expression had already become extremely solemn, and his heart was filled with shock. Killing a quasi-emperor across a great realm. This was simply unimaginable. ZK and the other girls revealed infatuated expressions. This was the power and influence of their young master, so powerful that they were willing to listen to his orders. Only Lin Sun shook his head at this moment and said with a sneer, "I only know that things don't happen more than 3 times, and this move of yours is destined to be the same." In fact, he was also amazed and he smelled a dangerous aura. The power and influence of this move even stimulated the chi in his body to run completely, and his fighting spirit was ignited. Zhuan Yuheng said no more and suddenly waved his sleeve. Swish! The 9-inch edge of the sword that condensed in front of him suddenly swept out. It was a simple slash, but wherever it passed, heaven and earth were silently torn apart like a canvas, and a ghastly crack appeared. Even a headmaster like Hung Xiao felt a stabbing pain in his eyes. As for ZK and the other girls, they couldn't even open their eyes, and the divine sense that they emitted felt as if it was being torn apart. This sword gathered the great momentum of the universe and integrated it into the 9-inch edge of the sword. It seemed simple, but in fact, it contained great terror. Almost at the same time, Lin Sun also made his move. From the acupoints of his body, sword chi shot out like a torrent. Dense like a storm, it covered the universe and intertwined with each other. Indistinctly, it turned into a sword furnace that seemed like it was going to swallow the universe. The 10 directions sword rain turned into a furnace, and it had the power of the Taishian sword scripture, as well as the wonders of the realm of Tao. In an instant, the 9-inch sword chi was covered by the sword furnace, and it was swallowed by it. Clang, 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 a series of collisions that were as dense as thunder could be heard. ZK and the others were so upset that they almost coughed up blood. Even Hung Xiao took a deep breath, and only then did he manage to resolve the terrifying aftermath of the collision of the forces. In the void, the sword furnace was surging, and the dense sword chi swirled in it, fighting against the 9-inch sword chi. They clashed with each other, and the rolling sword chi spread out. The scene was too terrifying. Without a doubt, if there were outsiders involved in the battle, they would definitely suffer unimaginably serious consequences. At best, they would be severely injured, and at worst, their souls would be destroyed. In the intense battle, the 9-inch sword chi gradually dimmed and became blurry. But at the same time, the Taishian sword chi that had turned into the sword furnace was also crushed, and it shook violently on the verge of collapse. In the end, the sword furnace exploded, and it turned into a rain of light that spread out. But before Zhuan Yuheng could rejoice, his 9-inch sword chi also collapsed, dissipating in the torrent of power. In an instant, Zhuan Yuheng's pupils shrank, and his hands and feet turned cold. He was stunned. The 9-inch sword chi, the extreme manifestation of his cultivation, had once allowed him to create the magnificent feat of killing a quasi-emperor across a great realm, and the elders of his sect were full of praise. But at this moment, the ultimate move that he was most proud of, most confident, and most proud of had been blocked by someone else. And his opponent was a person of the same realm that he had never even heard of before. All of this was like a heavy blow, and it made Zhuan Yuheng feel incredulous, and his head was buzzing. Soon, the smoke and dust dispersed, and the sword chi disappeared. When the vision and divine senses of ZK and the other girls recovered, and they saw Lin Sun standing in the clouds, alive and well, without any injuries on his body, all of them widened their eyes. This, Chapter 2010. The void was in disorder, and the remaining breath of destruction was reverberating. But there was silence in the field. The power of the first of Zhuan Yuheng's 3 moves made Hung Xiao believe that Zhuan Yuheng's foundation was no weaker than that of Lu Dubu and Wu Huang. The power of the second move amazed Hung Xiao. He believed that no one in Cloud State could match Zhuan Yuheng in the control of the power of all living beings. As for the power of the third move, Hung Xiao was shocked, because this move had the power to threaten the realm of quasi-emperors. The 9-inch Taoist edge, with its sharpness and extreme power, was enough to make all living beings in the world tremble. But in the end, it was resolved. At this moment, Hung Xiao felt dizzy and dizzy. The young people nowadays were simply more incredible than the other. Before, Hung Xiao had seen the shocking scene of Lin Sun killing 6 quasi-emperors of the Hellion clan by himself. At that time, he was so shocked that he almost lost his mind. And now, there was one more Zhuan Yuheng. But relatively speaking, the impact of Zhuan Yuheng's attack was far less than when Lin Sun killed the 6 quasi-emperors. ZK and other girls didn't know about Lin Sun's previous achievements. At this moment, they were so shocked that their faces turned pale and they were tongue-tied. They probably couldn't imagine how there was anyone in the world who could block Zhuan Yuheng's strongest attack. Unexpected, after a while, Zhuan Yuheng woke up from his stupor. His expression was uncertain as he stared at Lin Sun in the distance with surprise in his eyes. Lin Sun was as calm as before. He brushed his clothes that were blown up by the wind and said, "You're already very good. At least the third move made me feel a little threatened." Lin Sun's understatement made Zhuan Yuheng's mind tumble again. Just some threats? Now it's my turn. Hearing Lin Sun's words, Zhuan Yuheng finally couldn't hold back his inner unwillingness and said, "You can block 3 of my moves. Do you think I can't block 3 of yours? Then give it a try." Lin Sun stepped forward in the air, his robe fluttering. He pinched his fingers and a big pale, yellow seal emerged. The seal of all living beings. It was also a kind of talent that gathered the will of all living beings. When it was cast by Lin Sun, this seal seemed to carry a world to kill. Zhuan Yu let out a cold snort and leaped forward like a sovereign descending upon the world, swinging his fist to meet Zhuan Yu head-on. Boom! The sky collapsed and the earth caved in. The mountains and rivers dimmed. Amidst the rumbling sounds of collision, the seal of all living beings cracked and dissipated. Zhuan Yuheng's body swayed, and he laughed loudly. "You're only SOSO." Lin Sun nodded and stepped forward again, still displaying the seal of all living beings. However, the might of this strike was completely different. It was as if there were all living beings devoutly chanting sutras in the world of a great abyss, intending to devour Zhou Su and refine him. Zhuan Yuheng's figure stiffened, and then he suddenly let out a long howl. His figure was like a violet sun in the sky as he executed his Tao domain. A nation of faith gathered. Countless figures knelt between heaven and earth, piously praying. The flames of faith gathered together, burning fiercely. When Lin Sun's all living beings seal attacked, the kingdom of faith suddenly shook violently, and a scene of destruction appeared within it. The world was overturned, all things were sinking, and all living beings were screaming miserably. It didn't take long for it to disappear. Zhuan Yuheng coughed up blood violently, his face pale. This made ZK and the other girls' hearts clench, and they all looked anxious and worried. "Young master, he was obviously injured. This is already the 2nd move, but I still blocked it." But Zhuan Yuheng laughed arrogantly. Although he was injured, he still looked disdainful and confident. "Childish." Lin Sun smiled indifferently, neither sad nor happy, and stepped forward. Boom! The seal of all living beings condensed again. Unlike before, when this big seal soared into the sky rolled violently, as if it was about to collapse, and the nearby void collapsed and cracked like glass. The big seal seemed to gather the will of God, resounding with the sound of Tao, and had the momentum to shock the ages. ZK and the other girls watched from afar, and their souls felt as if they were about to leave their bodies. They were so frightened that they trembled all over. Even Heng Zhao's body was cold, as if he had fallen into an ice cave. He couldn't help but think of the scene when Lin Sun killed the 6 quasi-emperors. Lin Sun was also so powerful, so nature-defying. Zhuan Yuheng's face changed completely. This blow not only made him feel danger, but also the smell of death. Under the instinctive stimulation of his body, his pores stood on end, and his state of mind was shocked. Without hesitation, he used almost all the strength of his body to display the 9-inch Tao edge again. A ray of sword light, as bright as the sun, pierced the sky. Crack! But in just a moment, the sword light seemed to hit the unshakable Tian Shan mountain. Its edge was thwarted, and it broke directly from the middle, making an explosive sound. Zhuan Yuheng's body trembled, and he coughed up blood again. He looked horrified. The shadow cast by the seal of all living beings had already submerged his whole body. At this moment, he felt that there was no way to escape, and there was no way to avoid it. Boom! The void shattered, and the seal of all living beings crushed the void. The sun, the moon, the mountains, and the rivers, and the latitude and longitude of heaven and earth all became chaotic. Zhuan Yuheng tried his best to avoid it, but it was like being in the eye of a storm, and the terrifying, devouring, and suppression force firmly restrained his whole body. Seeing the seal of all living beings approaching, Zhuan Yuheng's eyes were bloodshot, and the strong unwillingness in his heart made him want to fight desperately. Boom! The seal of all living beings finally descended, and in the next moment, Zhuan Yuheng's whole body was suppressed from the void, and he smashed heavily into the Jade Shu Peak. As the ground shook, he let out a roar and tried to stand up. But how terrifying was the power of the seal of all living beings. It could be said to be Lin Sun's full-force attack. Not to mention Zhuan Yuheng. Even a quasi-emperor would not be able to resist it. Crack, crack! Zhuan Yuheng's body bent under the pressure, and at this moment, it was unknown how many bones in his body were broken, and his skin cracked and bled. The most terrifying thing was that the devouring power released by the seal of all living beings, while suppressing him, was also plundering and refining his essence, qi, and spirit. Young Master, ZK and the others were so shocked that their souls almost left their bodies. Just as they were about to go forward to rescue him, they were reprimanded by Heng Xiao. If you go forward, you will only harm him. Don't worry, as long as he admits defeat, little friend Jin Di will definitely not kill him. Boom! At this moment, the seal of all living beings slowly pressed down, and the entire Jade Shu Peak shook violently. And Zhuan Yuheng was in an even worse state. He was seeing stars, and blood flowed out of his 7 apertures. Blue veins popped on his forehead, and his body showed signs of cracking. He was about to be forced to kneel on the ground. If you don't admit defeat, there are only 2 outcomes. Either kneel on the ground or die. No matter which outcome, I'm afraid you will not be able to accept it. In the distance, Lin Sun's indifferent voice sounded. Don't even think about it. Zhuan Yuheng roared. These 3 words revealed endless anger and unwillingness. His body was steaming with divine brilliance, and he was desperately resisting, as if he was burning himself. ZK and the others were in a panic, and their minds were filled with terror. Whether their young master kneeled on the ground or died, they could not accept it either. Crack, crack! Zhuan Yuheng's body was pressed lower and lower, and his bones were constantly cracking. Blood was gurgling out of his pores, as if he had turned into a bloody man. But even so, he was still holding on, and gritting his teeth, as if he would rather die than admit defeat. At this moment, Heng Xiao looked anxious. He was also worried that if Lin Sun was careless, he would kill Zhuan Yu. In that case, the consequences would be too serious. At this moment, the seal of all living beings suddenly stopped, and then silently dissipated in the air. Bang! The pressure suddenly disappeared, and Zhuan Yuheng's body, which was under extreme pressure, suddenly staggered and fell on a rock. His hands and feet were twitching, and his body was bathed in blood. He looked miserable, and he was gasping for breath. Heng Xiao heaved a long sigh of relief. ZK and the other girls also relaxed at the same time. Their bodies had long been soaked in cold sweat. The scene just now had caused incomparable suffering and torture to them. Although your strength is a little weak, your bones are very hard. This time, you have blocked it, Lin Sun said. His clothes were neat and tidy, and he was not injured at all. Compared to Zhuan Yuheng's miserable state, it was like the difference between clouds and mud. Heng Xiao also walked over and said with a smile, although they only used 3 moves in this battle, it was incomparably marvelous. Without a doubt, the 2 of them are the most dazzling figures in the world. Now that they're evenly matched, it's truly an eye-opener for me. ZK and the others hurriedly ran over, and they fed Zhuan Yuheng the divine medicine and wiped off the blood. All of them were distressed. Get out of the way. Zhuan Yu Hung shouted coldly and pushed ZK and the other girls away. He took a deep breath and stood up with difficulty. He looked at Lin Sun and said, "This battle I lost. I, Zhuan Yu Hung, don't need your sympathy, and I won't go back on my words." As he said, he waved his sleeve, and a bronze box swept out and was thrown to Lin Sun. "This is the treasure I lost to you. Take it." His voice was resolute, and his attitude was resolute. This surprised Lin Sun. He couldn't help but look at Zhuan Yu Hung and said, "I didn't expect that there is such a person like you in heaven and earth Taoism court." Zhuan Yu Hung snorted coldly, and then said in a hoarse voice, "ZK, let's go." ZK and the other girls hurriedly stepped forward, activated their spiritual power, and left with Zhuan Yu Hung. However, halfway there, Zhuan Yu Hung suddenly stopped and said, "Looking at you reminds me of a person. Back then, when I was consecrated as a sage, that person surpassed me with absolute superiority. Even now, I still feel unconvinced. You are very similar to him. When the Tao Discussion Festival begins, I will fight with you again." With that, the group of them gradually moved further away. Hung Xiao was stunned. Watching them leave, he couldn't help sighing with emotion. Zhuan Yu Hong deserves to be the core descendant of heaven and earth Taoism court. He has a great spirit that ordinary people can't reach. Lin Sun said, "Not all the descendants of heaven and earth Taoism court are like this." After thinking about it, he added, "Of course, Zhuan Yu Hung is really extraordinary. At least, even when he was in a desperate situation, he didn't use his treasure." Lin Sun was very clear that Zhuan Yu Hung must have a trump card, such as the bronze box he gave him, which contained a terrifying treasure at the level of imperial weapon. In the battle just now, if Zhuan Yu Hung used such a treasure, he would definitely not be suppressed by Lin Sun like this. Obviously, seeing that Lin Sun didn't use his treasure, he disdained to do so. The rarest thing was that he was a person who was willing to admit defeat. He would rather lose the imperial weapon than lose his pride. Chapter 2011. From this chapter on, Zhuan Yu Hung was changed to Zhuan Su Hung. Zhuan Chu Hung left. He was willing to accept his loss and left without any hesitation. Hung Xiao felt relaxed. From the boldness and strength of character that Zhuan Chu Hung had displayed, he would not bear a grudge against the 4 Stars Dao sect after experiencing such a great defeat. After chatting with Lin Sun for a while, Hung Xiao also left. From beginning to end, he did not inquire what kind of sovereign weapon was sealed in the bronze box left by Zhuan Su Hung. Lin Sun returned to the cave residence and opened the bronze box as soon as possible. What entered his eyes was an expanse of silver divine radiance that was gentle like water, and it was brilliant, bright, and carried a shocking divine aura. A jade disc lay silently within the bronze box. It was translucent and crystalline like snow, and it revealed a flawless feeling of perfection. Looking carefully, there were 2 strange Taoist symbols in the jade plate. They were like a pair of swimming fish, dividing into yin and yang, and rotating with each other. In a trance, Lin Sun felt his mind tremble, as if he was in a strange world. This world was indescribably chaotic. Countless chaotic and vast traces of the Grand Tao surged into appearance, and they were like countless wriggling earthworms that formed a dense and boundless expanse. Every trace of the Great Way contained a wonderful Taoist sense, describing the essence of the Great Way. However, it was too fragmented and chaotic, making people dizzy and almost coughing up blood. With Lin Sun's current cultivation and level of understanding of the Great Way, he was also upset and confused when he saw this scene. Even if he looked at it for a long time, his state of mind was restless, and there were signs of collapse. The countless traces of the Great Way were too chaotic and messy. At this time, a jade plate appeared, bright and clear, showing a sign of perfection. As it rotated, 2 strange symbols like swimming fish flickered, gathering the countless fragmented traces of the Great Way and integrating them into the jade plate. Then, an amazing scene appeared. The chaotic traces of the Great Way were sorted out and classified. Then, with the rotation of the jade plate, they were constantly deduced and showed the most essential essence. Boom! At this point, Lin Sun's mind was shocked. These scenes disappeared in his mind, but Lin Sun had already understood the origin of the sovereign weapon in front of him. The formless Great Way. The Great Way was formless, and the form was born from the heart. Anatta, formless anatta, emptiness. Simply speaking, the Grand Tao was shapeless and nameless, and the Grand Tao cultivators comprehended were the traces of the Grand Tao they saw in their mental state. On the other hand, the traces of the Grand Tao that every single cultivator saw were bound to be completely different. If one's mental state was able to reveal the ethereal state of selflessness and formlessness, then one would be able to comprehend the most essential profundity of the Grand Tao. The Void Great Tao Plate was an emperor artifact that could help cultivators comprehend and deduce the Great Tao. Understanding this, Lin Sun couldn't help but gasp. He realized that although the Void Tao Plate wasn't a weapon for battle, it was marvelous and unparalleled. Deducing the traces of the Grand Tao and comprehending the essence of the Grand Tao was tantamount to helping cultivators comprehend and understand the secrets of the Grand Tao in the universe. With this treasure, why should I worry about not being able to bring my Tao domain to a perfected state? For the first time, Lin Sun realized the value of the Void Great Way Plate and was amazed in his heart. If he hadn't seen it with his own two eyes, he would have never imagined that such a strange and miraculous emperor artifact actually existed in this world. Lin Sun didn't dare to underestimate Zhuan Xuheng, who was willing to hand over this emperor artifact in order to preserve his strength of character. It was one thing to be willing to concede defeat, but it was difficult for an emperor to hand over such a miraculous emperor artifact so resolutely. So far, Lin Sun had 5 emperor artifacts, namely the Infinite Bottle, the Lamp of No Blame, the Seal of No Life, the Flag of No Direction, and the Void Plate. In other words, Lin Sun already had 5 of the 9 emperor artifacts of Kunlun. After carefully playing and looking at the Void Great Way Plate for a long time, Lin Sun put it away and opened the huge bronze box again. In this box, in addition to the 2 treasures, the Seal of No Life and the Flag of No Direction, there was a piece of gray soil and a piece of decayed divine wood. Lin Sun stared at them for a long time, but he couldn't find anything. Moreover, he couldn't sense the aura fluctuations of these 2 treasures even with his divine awareness. Suddenly, he thought of an old man. Clatter, with a wave of Lin Sun's sleeve, the divine cultivation ancestral tree appeared out of thin air. This divine cultivation ancestral tree had once traveled the starry sky with the sky-splitting emperor, so it was experienced and knowledgeable. Moreover, its body was a type of divine wood. As soon as it appeared, it cried out excitedly, "My God! Is this the chaotic life soil?" Its voice was filled with disbelief. Chaotic life soil? Lin Sun was shocked in his heart. All those years ago, the spirit of the insignificant Bao, Wu Kei, had once said something. The 4 ancient divine woods, Fusong, Kangwu, Jinmu, and Kunwu, were all born from the source of chaos, and they naturally contained Tao markings that belonged to the source of chaos. According to rumor, so long as one gathered all the soul origin roots of these 4 types of divine trees and nurtured them with the chaotic life soil, 5-colored wondrous earth, clear muddy star soul sand, and primeval chi water, then one would be able to develop a sapling of the chaotic quintessence tree. At that time, so long as the seedling was nurtured within the body, it would be of incredible help to the cultivation of the Emperor Tao. According to what Wu Kei said, in the battle for the Emperor realm, whoever was able to control a chaotic source tree was equivalent to possessing the ability to comprehend the laws of chaos and control chaotic Tao energy, and it was far from something other Emperor realm figures could compare to. During these past few years, Lin Sun had gathered the soul origin root of the Fusong divine wood in the Sunset Valley that the Golden Crow clan resided. In the immortality peach secret realm of the Kunlun ruins, he'd gathered a piece of 5-color wondrous soil. At this moment, the divine cultivation ancestral tree actually said that the gray and hazy soil within the bronze chest was actually the chaotic life soil. How could Lin Sun not be shocked? Is it really this treasure? He couldn't help but ask. The divine cultivation ancestral tree was already excited to the point its branches trembled, and it danced with joy. It's this treasure. Doesn't it look very inconspicuous and without any intelligence? That's because the chaotic life soil has always been like this. Only by watering it with primordial chi water would it reveal its true appearance. As it spoke, it exclaimed with admiration once more, and it seemed to have never imagined where Lin Sun had found this treasure. Because a very long time ago, for the sake of searching for this treasure, it and Sky Split had traveled the starry sky, and they'd searched for countless years, yet they were unable to find it in the end. Whoosh! Lin Sun waved his sleeve and directly put away the palm-sized chaotic life soil. He was worried that the divine cultivation ancestral tree would become excited and swallow this treasure. Sure enough, the divine cultivation ancestral tree begged, "Little friend, can you share some with me? Just a fingernail is enough." Lin Sun refused flatly. "We'll talk about this in the future. Now, take a look at what this is." He pointed at the piece of rotten divine wood. The divine cultivation ancestral tree was obviously very unwilling, and its expression was filled with hidden bitterness. However, when it saw the piece of rotten divine wood, its body instantly trembled. This thing seems to be extremely similar to the legendary builder tree. The divine cultivation ancestral tree was completely shocked. The builder tree, a divine tree that's said to be able to communicate with a myriad of worlds in the heavens. It was born from the chaotic ancestral root, and every leaf contains a universe within, and every root can lead to a universe. The ancient emperors called the builder tree the heavenly tree. There was once a group of great emperors who climbed this tree from the bottom to the top for the sake of searching for the secrets of the chaotic ancestral root. And amongst the 4 great divine trees, the builder tree is the most mysterious. Lin Sun felt a surge of emotions when he heard this. The builder tree could communicate with the myriad of worlds in the heavens. One leaf, one world, one root, one universe. There had once been emperors who climbed it to search for the secrets of the chaotic ancestral root. This was undoubtedly too unbelievable. What a pity, what a pity. This piece of divine which should be a fragment of the builder tree, but it has long decayed, and the Tao patterns and spirituality within it have all been corroded. Immediately after, the divine cultivation ancestral tree beat its chest and stamped its feet, looking extremely distressed. If not for this, just a fragment like this would be able to make emperors fight over it crazily. Lin Sun was startled. He calmed down from his excitement and said, "You mean this piece of wood no longer has any value?" The divine cultivation ancestral tree nodded and sighed. The decay is too severe. In the end, it has become a piece of waste. Lin Sun thought for a while and put it away. If there was a chance in the future, he wanted to try and see if he could repair this piece of rotten builder tree. At the same time, on a beautiful treasure ship that was sailing towards the Central Plains, Zhuan Chuheng was healing his injuries and was silent. The defeat this time had also caused a great blow to him. "Young master, you don't have to be discouraged. When we return to the Central Plains, you only need to leak the news that Jin Di possesses the lifeless seal and the directionless flag. There will be people hunting him down." An incomparably beautiful woman said in a low voice. Zhuan Chuheng raised his head, his eyes cold and frightening, and said, "If you dare to say another word, I will immediately pull out your tendons and peel off your skin." The beautiful woman trembled all over and her face turned pale. Zhuan Chuheng ignored her and glanced at the other women and said, "Not a single word about what happened today. Do you understand?" All the women's expressions changed, and they hurriedly nodded in agreement. Zhuan Chuheng took a deep breath and said word by word, "Whether it is the void plate or other sovereign weapons, I will win them back myself. There is no need for you to meddle at all." The women became more and more frightened. The next morning, when Lin Sun woke up from his cultivation, he received news from Hung Shao that the founder of Xuanji Taoist sect Boyazi, had returned to the sect. Immediately, Lin Sun and Hung Shao entered the back mountain forbidden area again. Little, when Boyazi, who was thin and dressed in a gray robe, saw Lin Sun, he opened his mouth to call him martial uncle, but in the end, it was changed to little friend. After Lin Sun stepped forward to greet him, he asked, "Is it done?" Boyazi nodded with a smile. "I have arranged for the Jiang clan of the sovereign family. If you are in a hurry, you can go there now." "Then let's go." Lin Sun made a decision. Okay. Boyazi was not a sloppy person. He immediately took Lin Sun and left Xuanji Taoist sect quietly without alarming anyone. Lin Sun was not worried about encountering any disturbances along the way with a big shot who had become an emperor in ancient times. In fact, it was indeed so. Chapter 2012. The Jiang River, one of the 8 major rivers in the primordial world, was located at the border of Jinjiao province. The Jiang clan, an imperial clan, was located at the upper reaches of the Jiang River. On the bank of Jiangshui River, Boyazi and Lin Sun swam upstream like a mighty and boundless river rolling and roaring. The Jiang clan is a descendant of the immemorial Emperor of Flame. Although the clans suffered a great loss in the Battle of Emperors, their foundation is still not to be underestimated. On the way, Boyazi introduced the Jiang clan to Lin Sun. Jiang Xinglin, the current patriarch of the Jiang clan, is a guy with 1 foot in the emperor realm. He can be called a half-step emperor and is stronger than an emperor-to-be. Apart from Jiang Xinglin, the clan has many emperor-to-be and hundreds of thousands of clansmen. Of course, that's not important. What's important is that the Jiang Xingque you want to meet is the elder sister of Jiang Xinglin, the patriarch of the Jiang clan. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. So if I want to meet senior Jiang Xingque, I can't avoid Jiang Xinglin? Boyazi smiled and said, "Young friend, Jiang Xinglin might be the clan head, but he's not the most difficult to deal with. The most difficult to deal with are the several martial emperors overseeing the clan." Several emperors. Even Lin Sun's heart trembled when he heard this. Within a clan, there were several martial emperors. This was the foundation of the immemorial imperial clan. In comparison, the Yu clan, where Yu Qingyang was from, was a notch lower. After all, one was an immemorial emperor clan, and the other was an ancient emperor clan. Fortunately, I asked an old friend to help me get in touch with an emperor realm ancestor of the Jiang clan, Jiang Rue. It shouldn't be difficult for me to meet Jiang Xingque on this trip to the Jiang clan, said Yi Qingyu. Boyazi said with a smile. One should know that Boyazi was also an emperor, but when facing the Jiang clan, he had to ask someone to establish a relationship. The reason was that Jiang Xingque's identity was too sensitive in the Jiang clan. After the law battle of the emperors ended, the Panwu, Qingkun, and Untainted Land Dao courts, in order to completely eradicate the influence of Fangsuan Mountain, worked together with some other major forces to search for and capture forces related to Fangsuan Mountain. Due to his close relationship with Mount Heart's successor Xian Kong, Jiang Xingque was also implicated and was seen as someone related to Mount Heart. The Imperial Jiang clan had no choice but to imprison Jiang Xingque as a sinner of the clan, because if they didn't do this, then the Jiang clan would definitely suffer unimaginable losses. Although Jiang Xingque was seen as a criminal and imprisoned, he still managed to keep his life. However, these were all matters of the past from the ancient times, and only some seniors of the Jiang clan knew about these secrets. However, they would not speak of these matters to prevent the news from leaking out and stirring up more trouble. However, as a result, the current imperial clan, the Jiang clan, only knew that Jiang Xingque was the eternal sinner of the clan, but they did not know the reason behind it. As a result, they all viewed Jiang Xingque as a disgrace and were unwilling to mention anything related to her. Therefore, Boyazi and other emperors had tried their best to get such an opportunity for Lin Sun to meet Jiang Xingque. If Lin Sun went by himself, he was bound to be rejected. "Thank you so much for your help this time," said Lin Sun. Boyazi quickly waved his hand and said, "Junior uncle, please don't be so polite with me." As the two of them conversed, they were already able to see a towering crimson red mountain range in the distance, and it lay across the extremely distant horizon. It was like a coiling fire dragon, winding endlessly, which was quite spectacular. That's Danxia Holy Mountain, located in the upper reaches of Jiang River. It is said that the ancient Yin emperor proved his Tao and became an emperor on this mountain. Since then, Danxia Holy Mountain has become the ancestral land of the imperial Jiang clan and has been living there for generations. Boyazi said with emotion, "The ancient Yin emperor, that was a legendary figure that possessed remarkable abilities and could be said to be a supreme figure. Just like the primeval White Emperor, he was ranked amongst the primeval 5 emperors. Danxia Holy Mountain was the place where he proved his Tao. It could be called a first-class blessed land in the primordial world. This mountain is covered in rosy clouds and suffused with divinity, and its might is like a dragon. It really is a rare place of treasure." Lin Sun nodded. After a while, in front of a gate of Danxia Holy Mountain, "Who is here?" a strong man guarding the gate shouted. Boyazi didn't say anything. He waved his sleeve, and a fiery red jade token flew out and passed it to the guard. The strong man of the Jiang clan looked at it respectfully and said, "Senior, please wait a moment." He turned around and quickly entered the gate to report. Yes. It wasn't long before a wave of hearty laughter resounded from within the sect, and then a rugged middle-aged man who wore a fiery robe and had hair that burned like flames teleported out from within. The aura that flowed throughout his body transformed into numerous dazzling divine chains of the laws that covered the heavens and the earth, and it was boundlessly terrifying. Lin Sun held his breath. From a distance, the middle-aged man in the fiery robe was like a volcano with the power to burn the sky and destroy the world. "Martial uncle, this man is Jiang Rue, an old monster at the first level of the Emperor realm, but he doesn't know my real identity." Boyazi said to Lin Sun while walking up with a smile, "I'm sorry to bother you this time." Jiang Rue, who was dressed in a fiery robe, laughed out loud. "What are you talking about, fellow Taoist?" Boyazi nodded and followed Jiang Rue into the mountain gate with Lin Sun. Clatter, the formation rippled. When Lin Sun's vision became clear again, he saw a fairyland-like scene. Tens of thousands of meters tall spirit mountains towered into the clouds. Beside them, waterfalls fell from above like the Milky Way falling into the ninth heaven. Every single spirit mountain was coiled by immortal radiance and enshrouded by divine radiance. They flowed with multicolored light and were extremely magnificent. Boom! A group of fiery beasts galloped through the mountains. Their bodies were like burning hills, radiating light and letting out thunderous roars. In the distance, there were even immortal birds and spirit beasts wandering around. On the rocks of the spirit mountains, ancient herbs could be seen everywhere, emitting essence and fragrance. There were also rare divine trees, ancient vines, and stamens bearing strange fruits. As far as the eye could see, there was a magnificent scene of divine beauty, overflowing, and picturesque beauty everywhere. No wonder it was the place where the Yin Emperor proved his Tao. Lin Sun sighed in his heart. This way pleased Taoism peer. Jiang Rue led the way. When Lin Sun followed his gaze, he saw a towering ancient city floating in the air between the mountains in the distance. It was full of fire and chaotic air. Lin Sun was shocked. This was definitely the most majestic city he had ever seen. Located between the mountains, above the void, Lin Sun felt that he was as small as an ant. Above the giant city, there was a gate tower with an ancient plaque hanging. It was flowing with divine light and filled with mist. 3 words could be vaguely seen. Yin Emperor City. This was the ancestral grounds of the Jiang clan, and it was personally created by the primeval Flame Emperor. Generations of descendants of the Jiang clan resided within it. This city connected the sky above and the mountains below. It looked like it was sitting high in the sky, overlooking all living beings. Led by Jiang Rue, Lin Sun and the others attracted many curious gazes along the way, but they didn't encounter any trouble and entered the Yin Emperor City smoothly. Inside the Yin Emperor city, it was a different scene. Instead of row upon row of buildings, there were well-proportioned paradises. Moreover, the city led to the nearby mountains, which were all connected by white jade stairs. Together, they outlined a marvelous scene of crisscrossing paths and paradises. Lin Sun and Boyazi were arranged to stay in a verdant paradise. Nearby, there were pine and cypress forests, green bamboos dancing, and streams winding through. Spiritual Qi curled up. Jiang Rue said, Taoism peer, wait here for a moment. I'll make some arrangements and then lead you to the forbidden area of the clan. Thank you, Taoism peer. Boyazi cupped his hands in obeisance. After he sent Jiang Rue off with his gaze, Boyazi said via voice transmission, Little Martial Uncle, this place is already a restricted area of the Imperial clan, the Jiang clan. Every single move we make might be noticed by them, so we must not give ourselves away. Lin Sun nodded. Time passed little by little. After waiting for 30 minutes, Jiang Rue still didn't appear. Boyazi couldn't help frowning. Did something unexpected happen? At this moment, Jiang Rue, dressed in a fiery robe and with burning hair, hurried over with a touch of shame. Taoism peer, I'm afraid I can't help you this time. Lin Sun and Boyazi looked at each other, and their hearts sank. Taoism peer, did something unexpected happen? Boyazi asked. Jiang Rue's expression was uncertain. He looked at Boyazi for a moment and said, Taoism peer, if you trust me, don't ask about this again. You'd better leave now. How could Boyazi be willing to leave like this? He frowned and said, Taoism peer, can you make an exception? You can't let me come here for nothing, can you? Jiang Rue shook his head. There's no turning back. Boyazi was about to say something, but Lin Sun shook his head. He immediately suppressed his displeasure and said, Well, we'll leave first. Jiang Rue wanted to say something, but finally sighed softly. I'll give you an answer later. Boyazi didn't want to listen anymore. Anyway, he was also an Emperor realm figure. Now, he came from thousands of miles away only to be rejected, which made him extremely dissatisfied. However, just as Boyazi and Lin Sun were about to leave, an indifferent voice suddenly sounded. Since you're here, why are you in a hurry to leave? Whoosh! A tall and old figure appeared out of thin air. He was dressed in a jade robe, with black hair like ink and a pair of eyes surging with terrible divine flames. He stood in front of the road, exuding power like a supreme god. Boyazi narrowed his eyes and subconsciously shielded Lin Sun behind him. Jiang Rue's face changed slightly, and he said, Seventh uncle, why are you here? This man was Jiang Yutong, one of the several emperors of the Jiang family, an old man who had become an emperor as early as ancient times. Not only was his cultivation horrifying, but his seniority was also frighteningly high. Jiang Rue, an emperor realm figure, was only his junior. This is Yin Emperor City, the territory of the Jiang family. Why can't I come? Jiang Yutong's voice was cold, and he looked at Boyazi and Lin Sun behind him with unkind eyes. Chapter 2013. Jiang Yutong made no attempt to conceal his hostility as soon as he arrived. Lin Sun's heart sank. He never expected that even with Boyazi's painstaking help, there would still be such twists and turns. Don't worry, junior uncle. I'm here. Boyazi's eyes suddenly turned cold as he transmitted his voice to Jiang Yutong. What do you mean? Boyazi had his own pride as an Emperor realm practitioner. As early as 100,000 years ago in the ancient times, he had already become an emperor. He fought in the starry sky and founded a sect on his own, allowing the Xuanji Taoism sect to exist to this day and become the third most powerful orthodoxy in Cloud State. Perhaps it was far inferior to the Jiang clan in terms of foundation. But Boyazi had absolute confidence in his own combat capability. He was respectful and submissive in front of Lin Sun. But as an antique who had lived for more than 100,000 years, how could Boyazi lower his head in front of the Jiang clan? Of course, this was the territory of the Jiang clan. Once he started fighting, he was doomed to die. But Boyazi was sure that Jiang clan would not dare to fight him to the death. In that case, Even if the Jiang clan could defeat him in the end, they would have to pay a heavy price. This was the foundation of an Emperor Realm practitioner. What do you mean? I'd like to ask you what you're here for. Jiang Yutong looked indifferent. He ignored Lin Sun and stared at Boyazi. Seventh uncle, fellow practitioner Yunya, is not our enemy. Jiang Rue said hurriedly. Yunya was the pseudonym used by Boyazi. It's not up to you whether he's our enemy or not. Jiang Yutong's tone was very stiff as he continued to stare at Boyazi. You're a martial emperor, yet you've suddenly come to see a sinner of my clan. If I'm not wrong, there are only two possibilities. Boyazi grunted in acknowledgement and said, Tell me about it. First, you're sent by the enemy of Mount Heart sect to harm the sinner of our clan. Boyazi and Lin Sun both frowned at Jiang Yutong's words. They were also surprised by this speculation. Could it be that after so many years, the forces represented by the Panwu, Untainted, and Shinkun Dao courts had not given up on killing Jiang Xingxue? Secondly, you were sent here by the remnants of Mount Inner Heart. When Jiang Yutong mentioned the second possibility, both Boyazi and Lin Sun were shocked. What keen insight this old guy had. But when they heard the words surviving scum, it caused them to feel a wave of displeasure in their hearts. How is this possible? Jiang Rue's expression changed slightly. He and Boyazi did not have much of a relationship, and the reason why they knew each other was because an old friend had acted as a go-between. He had never thought that there was a problem with Boyazi's identity. Why is it impossible? Why was the Star Sparrow imprisoned? Isn't it all because of that arrogant Xian Kong of Mount Inner Heart? Jiang Yutong's expression was gloomy. If we hadn't been dragged down by Xian Kong all those years ago, how could our Jiang clan have suffered such a great loss in the Dao battles of the emperors? His voice was filled with resentment that had been accumulated for countless years. And now, an emperor wants to come out and see the Star Sparrow. Don't you think it's strange? Jiang Rue's body stiffened and his expression changed again. The way he looked at Boyazi had also changed. He could not help but ask, Are you the enemies of Mount Inner Heart, or the remnants of Mount Inner Heart? Boyazi immediately realized that things had become troublesome. Originally, he thought that it was just a meeting with Jiang Xingxue, and it was not a big deal. Who would have thought that the old monsters of the Jiang clan would all be extremely concerned about this matter? At this moment, Lin Sun, who had been silent all this while, walked out and said, Xian Kong is my senior brother. Jiang Yutong and Jiang Rue's pupils shrank upon hearing this. Both of them knew Xian Kong too well, and they had met him many times before the Dao battles of the emperors of the ancient era broke out because of Jiang Xingxue. At that time, Xian Kong was the most dazzling ultimate saint king of the younger generation. He was regarded as invincible among those in the same realm, and he was generous and chivalrous. At that time, Jiang Yutong and Jiang Rue were also the best of the younger generation with outstanding talents, but they were far inferior to Xian Kong in terms of reputation and fame. After Xian Kong and Jiang Xingxue met and fell in love, the Emperor Jiang clan was happy to see it happen and even began to arrange a marriage for the two. But it was also at this time that the Dao battles of the emperors broke out. From then on, everything changed. At this moment, when Lin Sun said that he was Xian Kong's junior brother, the two emperors, Jiang Yutong and Jiang Rue, felt their hearts churn. This person was really a remnant of Mount Inner Heart. No wonder. So it turns out that you're here because of your senior brother Xian Kong. Ha. How many years has it been? Only now did Mount Inner Heart remember that there's a Jiang Xingxue in our clan. Jiang Yutong laughed. His expression was gloomy, filled with hatred and resentment. Jiang Rue looked up and down at Lin Sun and said in a low voice, Peerless Saint King realm, when did the descendants of Fengtsuan Mountain become so weak? Is it really because the orthodoxy of Fengtsuan Mountain was completely eradicated after the Taoism battle of emperors, leaving only some weak remnants? You too, watch your words. Boyazi's face darkened. Lin Sun had already revealed his identity, so there was no need to hide anything now. Whether it was a blessing or a curse, they could only face it head-on. You want us to watch our words? Jiang Yutong's beard and hair fluttered in the wind as he sneered. If it wasn't for Mount Inner Heart, our Emperor Jiang clan wouldn't have been so badly injured that we still can't recover. If it wasn't for Mount Innerheart, our clan wouldn't have been treated with hostility and suppressed by the untainted land, Qianquan and Panwu Dao courts. Also, if it wasn't for Xian Kong, Xingqiu wouldn't have been imprisoned for nearly 100,000 years. Now that you're here, you want us to watch our words? Do you deserve it? After asking a few questions in succession, Jiang Yutong's face had already turned livid with rage. He was an Emperor realm figure, and his mental state was extremely firm since a long time ago. However, he seemed to be extremely agitated at this moment. Obviously, this matter was a knot in his heart. Jiang Rui's expression was gloomy as well. Boyazi took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "Everyone has a conclusion in their hearts about who's right and who's wrong in these old enmities. Don't forget that when Marshal Uncle Xian Kong and Senior Jiang Xingqiu were together, your Emperor Jiang clan was proud of it." He paused for a moment and continued. "But later on, some misfortunes occurred, yet all of you pushed all the blame onto Marshal Uncle Xian Kong. Isn't this a little too unfair?" Jiang Yutong's expression suddenly became terrifyingly icy cold. "Fellow Taoist, I'm even more aware of what happened all those years ago. Xian Kong is dead. Mount Innerheart has been destroyed, and Xingqiu has been imprisoned. My Jiang clan has already paid a sufficient price for this. Now, let me ask all of you, why have you come looking for us now?" Lin Sun spoke once more. "Before senior brother Xian Kong passed away, he instructed me to meet Jiang Xingqiu and return an object to him. Besides this, I have no other intentions." "What object?" Jiang Rui asked with a frown. Lin Sun said, "You'll know when you meet Jiang Xingqiu." The hairpin shaped like a bamboo leaf given to him by Xian Kong looked very ordinary, but who knew if there were any mysteries hidden in it? "Ha ha, you little thing, you want to see Xingqiu? You're dreaming." Jiang Yutong laughed with anger and disdain on his face. His whole body was surging with qi that belonged to the Emperor realm. If it weren't for Boyazi's protection, Lin Sun would have been suppressed on the spot with his current cultivation. But Lin Sun looked extremely calm at this moment. He smiled and said, "Since I'm here, I won't give up." "Him?" Jiang Yutong squinted at Boyazi with disdain. "Young man, Mount Innerheart is not the same as it was in ancient times. But you talk as arrogantly as the successor of Mount Innerheart. Aren't you worried that I'll catch you and hand you over to your enemies?" Boyazi sneered. "Really? I'm afraid that your Jiang clan will suffer another disaster today." Now that things had come to this, he had to throw caution to the wind. Jiang Rui said angrily, "Yenya, how dare you threaten our Jiang clan?" Boyazi said coldly, "Fellow Taoist, it was you who threatened us first. You keep saying that we're remnants. What does your Jiang clan take us to be?" A cold glow suddenly flashed in his eyes as he said, "There's no need to waste your breath. If your Jiang clan still cares about the friendship from all those years ago, then allow my junior martial uncle to meet Jiang Xingqiu. Otherwise, I won't let this matter rest, even if I have to fight with my life on the line." The threat of an Emperor realm figure was enough to make anyone afraid. Moreover, Boyazi was not an ordinary Emperor realm figure. His words made Jiang Yutong and Jiang Rui extremely sullen. Their eyes were full of anger. How dare these two mountain Innerheart remnants threaten them in the Jiang clan's territory? Ding! Suddenly, Jiang Yutong turned over his palm and a bronze bell rang, emitting ripples of sound waves. Within a secret realm in the deepest depths of Flame Emperor City, two boundlessly terrifying auras suddenly charged out from within two abodes that had been silent for a long time. In the next moment, two figures had teleported here and appeared by Jiang Yutong's side. One was a black-clothed man that was thin like a bamboo, had gray hair, and a cold gaze. A crimson flame gourd hung at his waist, and his aura was obscure. The other was an old man that seemed as if he had 1 foot in the grave. He had white hair, muddy eyes, and held a verdant 7-foot-long bamboo cane. As soon as they appeared, Boyazi's expression changed while his heart felt heavy. The former was called Jiang Liuhua, and the latter was called Jiang Lanshui. Both of them had attained the Tao and become emperors during the ancient times. Moreover, their reputations shook the starry sky, and they were extraordinary figures that everyone in the world knew about. However, Boyazi had never imagined that these two people would actually still be alive. Because according to rumor, these two old freaks of the Jiang clan had perished during the Tao battles of the emperors all those years ago. Obviously, the rumor was false. No matter what, two Emperor Realm existences had suddenly appeared here, and the Jiang clan had an entire 4 Emperor Realm existences in total. Such a lineup caused Boyazi's heart to sink to rock bottom. Chapter 2014. Ringing the Emperor Yan's spiritual bell. Could there be an invasion? As soon as Jiang Liuhua and Jiang Lanshui arrived, their gazes locked onto Boyazi. Jiang Yutong then recounted everything that had happened. After listening, Jiang Liuhua took off the red gourd at his waist and drank a mouthful of wine, his expression cold. Desperate? You can try and see if you can cause harm to my Jiang clan. The white-haired, elderly Jiang Lanshui let out a long sigh. Evil, it's been so many years. Why can't your Fangsa Mountain stop for a while? Boyazi snorted coldly. Why do I remember that before the Emperor's Law battle, your Jiang clan did not treat my Fangsuan Mountain with such an attitude? Jiang Yutong's face darkened. But your Fangsuan Mountain has already been destroyed, and my Jiang clan has paid a great price for it. How do you expect us to treat you remnants? Remnants? Lin Sun, who had been ignored all this while, suddenly opened his mouth, his dark eyes incomparably deep. I respect you as my seniors, so I have always tolerated, but aren't you being a little too presumptuous? His voice was indifferent. Jiang Yutong, Jiang Rui, Jiang Liuhua, and Jiang Lanshui, the 4 emperors, were all stunned. Since when did a little thing at the peak of the Saint King realm dare to speak to them like this? It was absurd. It should be known that in the entire starry heavens, emperors were like supreme rulers, looked up to by countless beings. Even a quasi-emperor was as insignificant as an ant in the eyes of a true emperor realm. But now, a peak Saint King said that they were being presumptuous. Presumptuous? Even if I kill you, it's no different from crushing an ant. Jiang Yutong's voice was awe-inspiring, and a terrifying and boundless power spread out, as if the supreme will of the heavens had descended, oppressing Lin Sun. If you want to deal with my martial uncle, you'll have to step over my dead body first. Boyazi stepped out, his clothes fluttering, releasing a breath that dissolved the power into nothingness. His bearing was resolute and disdainful. Martial uncle? Jiang Liuhua couldn't help laughing. You're an emperor, but you address a little thing as martial uncle. You've lost all face as emperors. Forget it. Let's capture them first and find out their true intentions before we deal with them. Jiang Lanshui's voice was old and hoarse, but his attitude was the most domineering and overbearing. This one sentence was like an order, causing Jiang Yutong, Jiang Rui, and Jiang Liuhua to circulate their strength simultaneously. Boom! Terrifying Emperor Realm auras were like dragons emerging from the abyss, blotting out the sky and completely sealing off this paradise, completely isolating it from the outside world. Jiang Lanshui leaned on the 7-foot-long bamboo stick and knocked on the ground, saying, "This is our Yin Emperor's city. When we fight later, be careful. Don't harm our people." Of course. Jiang Yutong and the others smiled in a relaxed manner. How could 4 martial emperors not be able to take down a survivor of Fangsuan Mountain? The atmosphere was somber. Boyazi took a deep breath, and then he suddenly straightened his back and revealed a resolute bearing as he said via voice transmission, "Young martial uncle, I still have some trump cards in my possession. If I fight desperately, then there should be a trace of hope for me to send you off safely. If you have the chance to see Master in the future, please tell him that I have no regrets in my life to be able to follow him in cultivation." As he spoke, he was about to act when Lin Sun's voice sounded in his ears. "If you respect me as young martial uncle, then let me handle this matter." What? Boyazi's eyes narrowed, almost not daring to believe his ears. Young martial uncle was still making such a joke at a time like this? Those were 4 martial emperors. Let's do it. Zhang Lanxue spoke, his old face full of indifference. Jiang Yutong and the others nodded. Boom! Terrifying monarch realm laws emerged from the 4 of them like dazzling divine chains that intertwined with one another. They were dazzling and exuded a terrifying aura. Just this kind of power could crush mountains and rivers. Suppress. Jiang Yutong and the other 3 moved together. Jiang Yutong took out a Taoist sword. The blade was like lightning, dazzling like the sun, reflecting the terrifying scene of fire refining the firmament and burning all things. Taoist sword burning spirit. Zhang Rue waved his sleeve, and a golden soft whip soared into the air. The whip's shadows overlapped, transforming into a golden sea of laws, like a celestial river descending from the sky. Divine whip, golden river. The red gourd in Jiang Liuhua's palm flew up, emitting a fiery glow. The mouth of the gourd spat out a gray tongue of flame. Spirit gourd, muddy fire. Jiang Lanxue lifted the 7-foot green bamboo stick in his hand and pointed it in the void. Countless verdant lightning arcs condensed together, turning into a lustrous and translucent bamboo leaf, shining brightly in the void. Ancient treasure, heaven thunder bamboo stick. In an instant, the 4 martial emperors took out 4 emperor treasures and attacked together with thunderous momentum. Obviously, they wanted to end the battle quickly and suppress Boyazi in one fell swoop. Because if the battle dragged on for too long, it was bound to affect Yin Emperor City. This was absolutely intolerable to Jiang Yutong and the others. In an instant, the killing intent enveloped them. Boyazi's face changed abruptly, and even his breath stopped. He felt an incomparably strong, fatal aura. He had no time to care about anything else, nor to consult Lin Sun's opinion. This time, he couldn't let Lin Sun die here in any case. But just as Boyazi made his move, a graceful figure abruptly appeared before him, raised her hand, and pressed it against the void. It was an illusory woman, bathed in dreamy brilliance and radiance, revealing a sacred and transcendent air. She seemed to have been there for a long time. Her manner was calm, and her movements were understated. But when her white and slender hand pressed down in the void, with a wail, the Taoist sword-burning spirit trembled violently like a snake that had been stabbed in the heart. It staggered and flew out, its glow dimming. Jiang Yutong's mind shook violently. His qi and blood surged, and his expression changed abruptly. Then, with a dull and terrible roar, the Emperor Qi suddenly exploded in the field like a landslide and a tsunami, and a magnificent and bright light of law sprinkled down all over the sky. Then, Jiang Rue's golden river whip rolled back and whipped Jiang Rue fiercely, causing his shoulder to bleed. With a muffled groan, he staggered back a few steps. Then, Jiang Liuhua's turbid fire gourd fell to the ground with a bang. Blood dripped from his lips, and he looked horrified. Then, with a bang, the leaf condensed from countless emerald green thunderbolts suddenly exploded, turning into a colorful rain of light. Jiang Lanxue held his breath and shook his 7-foot bamboo stick violently. All this took a long time to describe, but actually happened in an instant. It was too fast. It was so fast that Lin Sun didn't have time to react. The joint attack from Jiang Yutong and the other 3 emperors was resolved. From the beginning until the end, the illusory and graceful figure had merely pressed her hand down in the air. Boyazi, who was already prepared to die, suddenly gasped. He was an old monster who had been an emperor for a very long time, yet even he was shocked by this inconceivable scene. When the smoke and dust dissipated, Jiang Yutong and the others had become solemn, and their eyes were locked on the uninvited guest not far away. It was a woman whose face could not be seen clearly. Her figure was graceful, slender, and flowed with dreamy, divine brilliance. She stood there alone, looking aloof and cold. But the aura on her body made Jiang Yutong and the others palpitate because they could not see through her at all. "Senior, we have no choice but to trouble you to help." At this moment, Lin Sun spoke with a trace of helplessness. This woman was she who was cultivating in the heaven-accessing place. All these years, Lin Sun had thought that he would no longer need to rely on the power of she. But in the end, he discovered that he was still too insignificant in the face of an emperor. Jiang Yutong and the others' expressions changed slightly. Only then did they realize that this little thing whom they regarded as an ant had come prepared. Boyazi secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He could not help but feel proud in his heart. This was the master's little junior brother. How could he be bullied so easily? His feeling was almost the same as when Hung Xiao saw Lin Sun win first place in the Yinzhou Grand Competition. It's just a small matter. It's no trouble at all. I haven't come out for a breath of fresh air in a long time. She's voice was clear and ethereal. A small matter. Lin Sun could not help but be stunned. This was a battle between emperors and a group of old emperors at that. Why did it become a small matter when it came to she? Who are you? Why are you interfering in the Jiang clan's matters? Jiang Lanxue asked in a low voice. He did not dare to act rashly. She's aura was obscure and unfathomable, making him feel extremely threatened. Jiang Yutong and the others felt the same. She's appearance was very sudden, but it was obvious that she was an extremely frightening woman. She could dissolve their all-out attack with just a raise of her hand. How could she be ordinary? She did not care about Jiang Lanxue at all. She only asked Lin Sun softly, I can see that they wanted to bully you. How do you think we should deal with them now? Jiang Yutong could not help but say, Friend, this is Yin Emperor's city. Even if you are powerful, you still... Before he finished speaking, she flicked her finger. Bang! Jiang Yutong was sent flying, coughing up blood. He looked extremely pathetic. This made Jiang Lanxue and the others' hair stand on end. The Emperor realm had long stood at the peak of the starry sky. They were seen as supreme existences with earth-shattering might. But only those at the Emperor realm knew that the Emperor realm was an extremely long and obscure path. Although they were all at the Emperor realm, the difference between them was vast. It was like climbing a mountain. Some were only standing at the foot of the mountain, some had already climbed to the waist, and some had already reached the peak. There was no doubt that this mysterious woman was a terrifying existence with power that far exceeded their imagination. I don't like people talking too much when I speak, she said coldly. If it was before, Jiang Yutong and the others would definitely be unhappy to hear this. But now, they were all silent, their expressions uncertain. They realized the severity of the problem. Even if this was the Jiang clan and Emperor Realm clan, their territory, it was nothing in front of this mysterious woman. Chapter 2015. The atmosphere was silent. Jiang Yutong and the other 3 Emperor Realm old monsters of the Jiang clan were completely suppressed by she. They didn't even dare to breathe. This made she even more extraordinary. Her figure was graceful, illusory like a dream. Even Boyazi had a strong feeling that this woman was too terrifying. This reminded him of his master Li Xianwei. However, he couldn't be sure who was stronger between this woman and his master, because their attainments in the Emperor realm had arrived at an unfathomable and immeasurable state. Lin Sun was silent for a moment and said, Senior, I came to the Jiang clan just to see someone. I don't want to cause any trouble. These words caused complicated expressions to appear on the faces of Jiang Yutong and the others. Under such an advantageous situation, a young man was able to disregard their former enmity and did not take the opportunity to attack them. This surprised them. Your temper seems to have improved a lot. She was also surprised. In the past, if Lin Sun was bullied, he would definitely fight back without hesitation. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, blood for blood. If it was my own business, I wouldn't mind turning the world upside down this time. Lin Sun took a deep breath and said, But now, I just don't want to disappoint senior brother Xian Kong. If he were alive, he wouldn't want to see anything bad happen. He couldn't forget the sadness and disappointment on senior brother Xian Kong's face when he gave him the light green bamboo, leaf-shaped hairpin in the city of vain deaths. He also wouldn't forget that senior brother Xian Kong only told him to give the hairpin to Jiang Xingxue, not to make a scene in the Jiang clan. That was why Lin Sun restrained his anger and chose to endure the four Emperor realm old monsters' bullying. Okay. She nodded and looked at Jiang Yutong and the others. Do you agree? His casual words caused the hearts of Jiang Yu and the others to constrict, and they exchanged glances with each other while their expressions changed indeterminately. Making them lower their heads like this in the territory of the Emperor clan, the Jiang clan, was something that they were too unwilling to do. Taoist friend, it's not that we are cruel, but if today's matter is leaked, the Jiang clan will definitely suffer again. Jiang Lanxue said in a low voice. The successor of Minuscule Mountain had suddenly come to their clan and even met Jiang Xingxue. What would those forces that hated Minuscule Mountain think if they knew about this? Won't it be fine as long as we don't leak it? She's voice was cold. Or perhaps you still do not agree in your hearts and are just finding excuses. Jiang Lanshue's heart trembled. He said, Fellow Taoist, we are indeed somewhat unwilling. Oh, she said, I can give you all a chance to express your dissatisfaction. However, only once. After that, if you all continue to be stubborn, I don't mind killing a few people. Jiang Lanxue and the others glanced at each other and nodded. This place is an important place of my clan, and it's branded with the will of my clan's ancestor, the primordial flame emperor. If fellow Taoist is able to resist the slaughter of this power, then we will definitely not dare to resist. Jiang Lan said. Bo Yazi's pupils narrowed, and he couldn't restrain himself any longer. Everyone, my young martial uncle, and this fellow Taoist have already exercised sufficient forbearance, yet all of you actually made such a request. Aren't you going too far? Just how terrifying would the will of the primordial flame emperor be? However, at this moment, Shi's eyes lit up and revealed a look of interest. He said, No wonder I sensed an unusual power in this place the moment I appeared. It should be the power of your primogenitor's will, right? Jiang Lanxue and the others couldn't help but be stunned. This woman had actually sensed it immediately? Quickly unseal this power. I want to try and see if this person has already comprehended the mystery of progenitor transformation in the Emperor's Path search back then. Progenitor transformation. This mysterious word caused all the martial emperor old monsters, including Bo Yazi and Jiang Yutong, to be shocked. The 9 heavens of the Emperor's Path, the progenitor transformation realm. That was a supreme realm that they didn't even dare to think about. For a moment, Jiang Lanxue and the others hesitated, feeling that she was even more unfathomable. What's wrong? She glanced at them. Jiang Lanxue immediately gritted his teeth and said, Let's do it. Immediately, he, Jiang Liuhua, Jiang Yutong, and Jiang Rui each took out a strange Taoist pattern of flame, which rose into the air. When the 4 Taoist patterns gathered together, the void shone brightly, and a dazzling flame emerged. A terrifying and ancient supreme aura also pervaded the air. Bo Yazi's expression changed abruptly, and he circulated his power to protect Lin Sun. She's clothes fluttered in the wind. She raised her head slightly and looked straight at the dazzling flame. Her entire body flowed with a magnificent, dreamlike, divine rain of light. She seemed to have noticed something and murmured, Yes, this is the aura. Boom! In the blazing and shocking flame, a majestic figure bathed in divine fire emerged. The image of a burning universe and galaxy was reflected behind his head, as if he was the ruler of divine fire. That aura was terrifying enough to make the starry sky tremble and all worlds admire him. With Lin Sun's eyesight in mind, he couldn't see this figure at all because it was too dazzling and supreme. Even with Bo Yazi's protection, it still made his hair stand on end and he felt suffocated. The power of the ancient flame emperor, Bo Yazi, was also shocked. This was a legendary supreme figure who had shocked the ages and shocked the heavens. Jiang Lanxue and the others were also excited at this moment, revealing fanaticism and reverence. This was the aura that belonged to their ancestor. The Flame Emperor, in the ancient times, conquered the world, swept away all enemies, and dazzled the starry sky. He was looked up to by billions of living beings. Now, his power had appeared in the world again. Greetings to the ancestor, unfilial descendant. Jiang Lanshui and the others bowed. What happened? The majestic figure spoke, his voice rumbling like the sound of Tao. Visible to the naked eye, the rolling law of fire flowed down from his body, evolving into endless wonderful images. I want to fight you, said she. Her graceful figure stepped forward, sparkling in translucent light surging around her. As she spoke, she suddenly pressed out a finger. It was simple, but everyone's eyes stung and their souls trembled. They could no longer see anything. Their vision and divine sense were all white. This caused all of them to be astounded. What kind of terrifying cultivation was this that even emperors like them were not qualified to watch such a battle? After an unknown period of time, she's cold voice sounded, "So, you also did not take that step back then." Then, everyone's vision became clear. Only then did they see she standing alone, her clothes fluttering with sparkling light. In the distance, the Flame Emperor's willpower was still as powerful as before. Fellow's words are mistaken. This willpower was left behind by me when I left back then, and the reason why I left was to take that step. The ancient Flame Emperor's voice rumbled with a unique arrogance. Is that so? But after so many years, it seems that your original body did not return. She said indifferently. Jiang Yutong and the others were shocked. I will return. The ancient Flame Emperor's voice was low, but there was determination in it. This step cannot be broken just like this. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure suddenly turned into a rain of fire and disappeared. Boyazi heaved a sigh of relief. Regardless of whether it was the ancient Flame Emperor or she, they both seemed to be searching for a path to break through. But what exactly was this path? Why was it that even with the power of the ancient Flame Emperor and she's strength, they still could not find it? Jiang Yutong and the others felt a sense of loss and heaviness. Even the primogenitor's willpower was blocked by this mysterious woman. Didn't this mean that as long as she willed it, no one in the Jiang clan could stop her? Are you still unwilling to give up? She looked at Jiang Yutong and the others. Jiang Lanshui's voice was bitter as he said, Fellow's remarkable abilities make us gasp in admiration. She seemed to have done something trivial. She nodded at Lin Sun. Then her figure turned into a hazy rain of light and disappeared. When she left, Jiang Lanshui and the others, as well as Bo Yazi, all heaved a sigh of relief. It was as if a divine mountain had been removed from their bodies. It couldn't be helped. The pressure and threat she brought them was too great. When they looked at Lin Sun again, their expressions were very complicated. There was no longer the contempt and disregard from before. Come with me, Jiang Lanshui sighed. He decided to bring Lin Sun to see Jiang Xingxue. Thank you. Lin Sun felt relaxed. In the depths of Emperor Yin City, there was a void path that led to a secret realm. Jiang Lanshui brought Lin Sun and flew into it silently. The secret realm was a world of lava. The ground was covered with a boundless sea of fire. The waves of fire rolled and splashed thousands of meters high. Extremely hot smoke filled the air, making the whole world seem like a huge furnace. It was boiling and burning, as if it would melt everything. This was the place where Jiang Xingxue was imprisoned. Xingxue, there's a guest who wants to see you. Jiang Lanshui spoke. His voice reverberated in the entire world of lava. How many years has it been? I thought you've already forgotten about me, the center of the clan. A faint voice sounded. It was like a whisper filled with endless disappointment. Jiang Lanshui's expression flickered. He let out a long sigh and said, I've brought the guest. You can talk. With that, he turned around and left. Lin Sun looked around. All he saw was a sea of fire. Fire mist rose between heaven and earth. He couldn't see anyone at all. Just when he was puzzled, a black boat suddenly emerged above the sea of fire. A woman sat alone on the boat. She was dressed in a snow-white morning dress. Her black hair was as black as ink, hanging down loosely. On the fiery sea, she gave people the feeling of being as cold as ice on a cliff. When Lin Sun looked at her, the woman also raised her head slightly and looked at him. The next moment, the woman seemed to notice something. She suddenly stood up and said, "It's the breath of everlasting leakless. Xian Kong, is that you? You finally come back to pick me up?" Chapter 2016. In the sea of fire, the black boat broke through the waves. On the boat, a woman in a white silk dress finally showed her face. It was a beautiful, pale face, eyes as clear as a spring, and eyebrows as deep as mountains. Her expression was one of absent-mindedness and excitement, and her voice was trembling. It was as if she could see the elegant and carefree figure of the past appearing in front of her after countless years. This woman was Jiang Xingque, a poor woman who had been imprisoned here for nearly 100,000 years. Lin Sun realized at once that she had mistaken him for someone else. Although he couldn't bear it, he still explained, "Senior, you've mistaken me for someone else." "How could I be mistaken? I can't mistake you for the spirit of everlasting and leakless." Jiang Xingque seemed very excited. She came to Lin Sun with her eyes full of excitement and trance. "Brother Xian Kong, you're really good at disguising yourself. Those old guys in my family must have been fooled by you. You must take me away this time." Her voice was tense and pleading. For the first time, Lin Sun found that a woman who had been imprisoned for nearly 100,000 years could be so pitiful and distressing. Just because he had practiced the method of everlasting and leakless, she mistook him for Xian Kong. It could be imagined how much she missed Brother Xian Kong in these years. Her dazed, and excited actions displayed how much she cared about her senior brother Xian Kong. This made Lin Sun's heart ache. How nice it would be if Brother Xian Kong was alive to see this scene. After a moment of silence, Lin Sun sighed softly and dared not look in her eyes. He said, "Senior, my name is Lin Sun. I'm Brother Xuan Kong's junior fellow apprentice. I'm entrusted by Brother Xian Kong to return an item to you." "Brother Xian Kong, you're lying to me, aren't you?" Jiang Xingque was like a lonely child. Her voice was pleading, and tears were swirling in her eyes. Lin Sun was speechless and couldn't go on. He couldn't bear it. He turned over his palm, and a light cyan, bamboo leaf-shaped hairpin appeared. Jiang Xingque, who was originally in a daze and on the verge of tears, was stunned. He stared at the hairpin in a daze and seemed to have recalled countless memories of the past. In the distance, the sea of lava churned and roared. Jiang Xingque's snow-white silk dress fluttered in the wind as she stood there with tears rolling down her cheeks. Lin Sun suddenly regretted that he should not have taken it out earlier. Otherwise, Jiang Xingque would not be so sad. After a long time, Jiang Xingque seemed to have calmed down. With a rare tenderness in his eyes, he stared at Lin Sun and said, "Can you just take it as Xian Kong putting on this hairpin for me?" Lin Sun nodded without hesitation. With a heartfelt smile on his face, Jiang Xingque turned around and murmured, "Brother Xian Kong, you said that as long as I saw this hairpin, it would prove that you were still alive. Now, I've been waiting for your news." Lin Sun raised his hand and coiled up Jiang Xingque's long hair that was as black as ink. He gently coiled it on his head, picked up the light, cyan hairpin, and gently inserted it. "Senior, you're right. It's because of senior brother Xuan Kong's entrustment that I can bring this thing to you," Lin Sun said softly. When Jiang Xingque turned around, there were no traces of tears in her eyes. Her face was as still as water, and her expression was extremely calm. She seemed to have completely calmed down without the excitement, trance, and infatuation from before. "Thank you, junior brother." Jiang Xingque saluted. "This is the best news I've heard in countless years." Lin Sun hurriedly said, "Senior, please don't be like this. This is what I should do as a junior brother. You're my husband's junior brother. How can you call me senior? Call me sister-in-law." Jiang Xingque smiled. Her appearance was clear and elegant, and her appearance was extremely beautiful. Her actions were gentle, but her complexion was very pale. "Okay," Lin Sun nodded. After that, Jiang Xingque led Lin Sun to the black boat that was anchored on the sea of flames. After they sat down, Jiang Xingqiu asked Lin Sun many questions, and practically all of them were related to Xiankong. Lin Sun told her everything. However, he intentionally concealed the matter of Xiankong being trapped in the city of the wronged and leaving the world. Jiang Xingqiu seemed to be very calm from the beginning until the end. After he spoke about many things about Xiankong, she asked about Lin Sun as well. Lin Sun naturally wouldn't conceal anything, and he told her about how he'd become an inheritor of Mount Innerheart and how he'd sought the path towards the Tao all these years. Perhaps it was because he'd been trapped for too long, but Jiang Xingqiu listened with great interest. Later on, when she found out that Lin Sun would be heading to the Central Plains Prefecture to participate in the Tao discussion held by the 6 great Tao courts in half a year, Jiang Xingqiu instantly frowned. On the other hand, when she found out that Lin Sun possessed a method to conceal his identity and didn't have to worry about being discovered, Jiang Xingqiu heaved a sigh of relief. Junior brother, amongst the 6 great Tao courts all those years ago, the Chaos, Cosmos, and Martial Tao courts were the most hostile towards Mount Innerheart, and they were the most proactive when it came to dealing with Mount Innerheart. Jiang Xingqiu pondered deeply and said, even though you already possess a complete method to conceal your identity, you must still be careful when you participate in the Tao discussion. According to my knowledge, the 6 great Tao courts have old seniors that call themselves ancestors in the Emperor realm. If they target you, it'll absolutely be a great calamity. Lin Sun was stern and said, I will. As he spoke, he couldn't help but ask, sister-in-law, besides the 3 great Tao courts, what's the attitude of the other 3 great Tao courts towards the matter of Mount Innerheart? The dark yellow Tao court is the most neutral and doesn't help either side. Jiang Xingqiu said, the Fiend court decided to watch from the sidelines. Although the destruction of the Taoist orthodoxy of Fengsuan Mountain had little to do with the Fiend court, the Fiend court did try to seize some of Fengsuan Mountain's heritage. As for the Guiyuan Tao court, as he spoke up to this point, Jiang Xingqiu shook his head. This Tao court is the most mysterious. It has never appeared before and after the Tao battle of the ancient emperors. Lin Sun had heard that the Guiyuan Tao court should be the most transcendent force among the 6 great Tao courts. It was almost secluded from the world. This sect had extremely few successors, but every successor had the cultivation of the emperor realm. One sect was a great emperor, and all generations returned to the origin. This was the Guiyuan Tao court. Actually, it wasn't just the Chaos, Panwu, and Qingquan Tao courts that participated in the battle against Minuscule Mountain. Some of the clans of the 7 primordial demon emperors and some of the 10 war clans also participated. For example, the Emperor Clan Kong Clan, the Emperor Clan Su Clan, the Emperor Clan Kuan Clan, and the 10 war clans Bloodscale Battle Clan, Heaven Ghost Battle Clan, Tao Battle Clan. When a wall is down, everyone gives it a push. The inheritance power of Mount Innerheart is too powerful. When Mount Innerheart encountered a great disaster, who wouldn't want a share of it? Jiang Xingqiu could not help but sigh at this point. It's a pity that Mount Innerheart's orthodoxy was destroyed in the end. Lin Sun's heart was in turmoil. After a while, he said, I only know that Mount Innerheart's orthodoxy might have collapsed, and the forces it had would have vanished into thin air. But as long as we, the successors of Mount Innerheart, are still alive. His voice was resolute, even if they were just wandering ghosts scattered across the heavens, and once their identities were exposed, they would be hunted by many people. But as long as they were alive, they could pass down the torch of Mount Innerheart from generation to generation. Jiang Xingqiu stared at Lin Sun and said, Junior brother, your senior brother Xiankong once said that the greatest strength of Fengsuan Mountain doesn't lie in how powerful it is or how many legacies it possesses. Instead, it lies in having descendants like you. As long as people are alive, it means that Mount Innerheart's orthodoxy is still alive. Lin Sun nodded in agreement. Junior brother, I'm unable to help you with the matter of you participating in the Tao discussion. However, I can tell you the secret of why your senior brother Xiankong was reputed to be invincible in the Saint Realm all those years ago. Speaking of this, Jiang Xingqiu revealed a touch of pride. Xiankong was the man she admired the most, and also the greatest pride in her heart. Lin Sun's heart shook, and a strong sense of curiosity welled up in him. Sister-in-law, please enlighten me. Jiang Xingchue's eyes were gentle, and she seemed to recall the past. She said, after your senior brother Xian Kong stepped into the Saint realm, it only took him less than 100 years to become the supreme of the true saint, great saint, and Saint King realms. No one could compare to him, and no one could reach him. At that time, he alone was able to suppress all his peers in the all heavens. At that time, the black-yellow celestial court was alarmed many times and had to revise the rankings of the 3 saint realm rankings in advance. As long as your senior brother Xian Kong was ranked first, no one could shake his position. Even the peerless geniuses of the 6 major Dao courts and the outstanding people of the 10 war clans couldn't do it. At that time, there was a popular saying in the ancient way of the starry sky. Who could claim to be invincible in the Saint realm? Who dared to claim to be invincible? Only Xian Kong of Fangsun Mountain knew about it. This is called invincible in the Saint realm in the heavens. Hearing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but gasp, and his heart was full of longing. He never expected that senior brother Xian Kong, who was trapped in the city of the Ronde, would have such a bright and glorious past. Unfortunately, before he could break through to the Saint realm, the Dao battle of the emperors broke out. Otherwise, with his talent and foundation, he was bound to be so dazzling. Jiang Xingchue's voice carried a trace of sadness, and he only restrained his emotions after a long time. And then he said with a smile, Junior brother, do you know that before he became a saint, your senior brother Xian Kong was the most inconspicuous figure in Fangsun Mountain? He was shy, and his face would blush when he talked to girls, and he couldn't even speak. He always said that he was a herder. His family was poor when he was young, and in order to support his family, he helped herd the sheep at a very young age. Because of his poverty and thin body, he was often ridiculed by his peers, and it caused him to feel inferior and antisocial. Later on, by chance, he entered Fangsun Mountain to cultivate, and Xian Kong has always helped take care of the spirit birds and spirit beasts on Fangsun Mountain. Chapter 2017. Speaking of this, Jiang Xingchue looked up at Lin Sun and said, Junior brother, do you know why your senior brother Xian Kong is invincible in the Saint realm? Lin Sun was shocked and said, I'd like to hear the details. Because he seeks a path towards the Tao that has never existed since the ancient times. Thus, the strength he possesses can be said to be unprecedented. As soon as Jiang Xingchue said this, Lin Sun had a feeling that he was not alone. It turns out that I'm not the first, Lin Sun murmured. Jiang Xingchue was also stunned, and then immediately understood and said with a smile, It seems that you have realized this very early. She paused for a moment and said, Your senior brother Xian Kong once said that there are countless people like him in the world that seek a path that has never existed since the ancient times, yet only a handful of them are able to succeed in the end. It's not that it's too difficult, but we are disturbed by many forces when we practice. For example, you should have comprehended many Taoist scriptures and secret techniques since you started cultivating until now. And you've also received guidance from many experts, right? Lin Sun nodded. Among the inheritances he had mastered, there were Samsara scripture, Yellow Court scripture, 9 Cauldrons world suppression scripture, endless devouring scripture. Other inheritances such as fighting saint method, Taishian sword scripture, 9 changes of calamity dragon, 9 strikes of shaking heaven, great divination finger, first cut of Tian Yuan, all of them were inherited from others. In these years, Lin Sun had also received guidance from many masters, such as the Golden Cicada Youth, Shi, Green Sun Saber Emperor, and so on. Even the art of eternity and no leak was inherited from senior brother Xian Kong. Jiang Xingchue said softly, These inheritances and powers are of great benefit to our cultivation, but at the same time, they will imperceptibly affect our pursuit of Tao. Those experiences, comprehensions, inheritances, Tao arts, all of them are branded with the wisdom and understanding of the grand Tao of others. When they're absorbed and refined by us, it seems to have become our own, but at the bottom of it all, it's still their inheritance in the end, and you're merely inheriting it. Many cultivators in the world are unable to discern this. They think that the path towards the Tao they seek is different from others, but in reality, they've imperceptibly been influenced by others, causing all of them to fail when they seek strength that is unprecedented in the past and present. Lin Sun couldn't help praising, indeed. Jiang Xingqiu smiled. This is what your senior brother Xian Kong said back then. I'm just telling you. Lin Sun also shared his own understanding. The sea contains all rivers. This is the unique skill of carrying on the past. It is to draw inferences about other things from one instance and blaze a new trail. This is to seek a way different from the world for oneself. This is to carry on the past and open up the future. He paused for a moment and continued. The core of an inheritance is to learn from others, and it isn't to form one's own path towards the Tao. Only in this way would one have the chance to accomplish something that has never been done since the ancient times. Jiang Xingqiu was even more surprised, and he said, Junior brother, looks like your path towards the Tao doesn't require the guidance of others. Can you tell me about the Tao you seek? Lin Sun thought for a moment and said, to accommodate all Tao, to develop all Dharma. There is no Tao in the world that cannot be accommodated, and there is no Dharma that cannot be developed in the universe. All streams return to the origin, and my Tao is one. An inexplicable shock surged in Jiang Xingqiu's heart. This Tao path was too taboo. One had to understand that there were tens of thousands of Taos in the world. How vast was it? Only by obtaining the power of an ancestor in the Emperor realm could one be called the ancestor of a Tao. But now, what Lin Sun said was to accommodate all Taos in the world. If so, when he became an emperor, wouldn't he have to seek the Tao of the ancestor of all Taos? The more Jiang Xingqiu thought about it, the more shocked she was. As far as she knew, there were some extremely amazing and peerless figures in ancient times who died because the Tao they pursued was too taboo. Junior brother, have you encountered any taboo things since you started your cultivation? She couldn't help asking. Yes. Lin Sun didn't conceal anything. He told her about the strange taboo catastrophe he encountered when he became a saint, and the taboo catastrophe he caused when he created his own Dharma. Have you resolved them all? Jiang Xingqiu asked. Lin Sun nodded. Jiang Xingqiu's heart at this moment could no longer be described as shocked. She looked at Lin Sun as if she was looking at a monster. After a while, she couldn't help laughing and said, your senior brother Xian Kong was amazing and heaven-defying in those days. I never thought that you would be even better than him. After a pause, Jiang Xingqiu took out a golden animal bone jade slip and handed it to Lin Sun. But because of this, I can give this to you without any worries. Lin Sun was stunned. What is this? This is your senior brother Xuan Kong's understanding and experience in the Saint Realm. When we were together, he left this thing to help me cultivate. Take it. Jiang Xingqiu's eyes were gentle. Lin Sun instantly realized the great value of this thing. Senior brother Xian Kong was known as invincible in the Saint Realm in those days. How could the understanding and experience he left behind be ordinary? Although the Tao you and your senior brother are pursuing is different, both are unprecedented since ancient times. This jade slip is the most suitable for you. Jiang Xingqiu looked gentle and amiable, as if she was treating her closest junior. In fact, if it weren't for the seniority, she was more than qualified to be Lin Sun's elder since she rose in ancient times. Thank you, sister. Lin Sun took a deep breath and accepted the gift with both hands. You have to cultivate hard. Your senior brother Xian Kong was invincible in the Saint Realm. You can do it too. I'm looking forward to your performance in the Tao Discussion Conference. Jiang Xingqiu's eyes were full of hope. Lin Sun felt warm in his heart and nodded. After talking for a while, Jiang Lanshui's voice suddenly resounded in this magmal world. Xingqiu, it's getting late. Jiang Xingqiu frowned and looked at Lin Sun, transmitting his voice to him. Junior brother, don't blame my clansmen. Although they are full of resentment against Mountain Heart, some Emperor Realm cultivators of Jiang clan fought side by side with Mountain Heart in the Tao Battle of Emperors. Moreover, even though I've been imprisoned here, I know very well that this is the only way my clan can protect my life. Otherwise, the chaos, Panwu, and Universe Dao courts will definitely not let the matter rest. I only hope that you can understand Jiang clan's difficulties. Lin Sun nodded seriously and said, "Don't worry, sister." Soon, Lin Sun left. Jiang Lanshui had been waiting there for a long time. He took a complicated look at Jiang Xingqiue, who was seeing them off in the distance. In the end, he just sighed and left the secret realm with Lin Sun without saying anything. A black boat floated on the raging sea of fire. All of a sudden, Jiang Xingqiue became the only person in the world. At this time, she raised her hand and took off the hairpin on her head. She clenched her hands tightly, and tears flowed down her beautiful but pale face. She sat there unconsciously, staring at the light cyan bamboo leaf-shaped hairpin in her hand, lost in thought. "Brother Xinkong, I saw Junior Brother. He said that you are still alive, but I know that if you're really alive, you will definitely come to see me. Come to think of it, we have been separated for more than 100,000 years. Time really flies. Don't worry, I will come to find you soon. But before that, I have to avenge you first." Jiang Xingqiue suddenly took a deep breath. His eyes, which were as clear as a spring, were filled with bone-deep hatred. Her hair, which was as black as ink, instantly turned into the color of frost and snow. "You must wait for me." She got up, her hair as white as snow and her dress as plain as silk. The black boat under her feet floated on the raging sea of fire. Flame Emperor City, in a blessed place. When he saw Lin Sun return with Jiang Lanshui, Boyazi, who had been waiting for him, heaved a sigh of relief. "Thank you, fellow Taoist." Boyazi cupped his hands. Jiang Lanshui's expression was complicated as he said, "I only hope that the people of Mount Innerheart will not disturb Xingqiu anymore. Our Jiang clan cannot withstand your torment anymore." Boyazi and Lin Sun looked at each other, and without saying anything, they stood up and took their leave. However, when they were about to leave, Jiang Lanshui suddenly said, "In these countless years, I have been thinking about one thing. With the resources of your Mount Innerheart, you should be able to suppress the chaos, cosmos, and Panwu Dao courts if they joined forces. But why was it destroyed just like that?" Lin Sun stopped and narrowed his eyes. In fact, during the law battle of the emperors back then, only 6 successors of your Mount Heart Orthodoxy participated in the battle. The other successors were nowhere to be found. Many people thought that the missing successors had already been eliminated. Jiang Lanshui was silent for a moment before he said, "But I don't think so." After that, he didn't say anything else. Lin Sun said in his heart, "I don't think so either." Even when he left Danxia Divine Mountain with Boyazi, Lin Sun had been thinking about one thing. Back then, he had met 9th Senior Brother Gyupu at the Sky Lock Peak of the Kunlun ruins. He had also heard Gyupu talk about the Emperor's Law battle. He clearly remembered that only Gyupu and a few other senior brothers had participated in the battle. This in itself was very unusual. In the ancient times, Mount Innerheart already had 49 disciples like Senior Brother Li Xianwei, Senior Brother Pu Zhen, Senior Sister Junhuan. Which one of them wasn't an extremely powerful existence? But they didn't participate in the Emperor's Law battle like Senior Brother Gyupu. Why was that? Moreover, after the end of the Emperor's Dao battles, Senior Brother Gyupu had said that he was the one who had asked his master, the Lord of Fengsuan Mountain, to arrange for him to stay on the Godlock Sky Peak. He wanted to suppress Demon Emperor Du Tian and avenge his senior brothers who had fallen in the Dao battles. Putting everything else aside, this at least meant that after the Emperor's Law battle ended, the Master of Mount Innerheart was still alive. However, if the Master was still alive, why hadn't he appeared? Seeing that Mount Innerheart's orthodoxy had been destroyed, why didn't the Master take revenge? There must be something else behind this. Lin Sun thought for a long time, but he couldn't think of an answer. However, he knew that those senior brothers and senior sisters who were scattered in the heavens might be drifting around like lonely ghosts. But they were definitely doing something for Mount Innerheart that no one knew about. Today, I went out to handle some matters. The update was brought forward, and it was 2 consecutive updates. Besides that, Let me explain a few things about Xiankong. In the original setting, Xiankong's cultivation level was at the peak of the Great Saint stage. This was indeed something that Goldfish hadn't expected. However, the plot required, or rather, Goldfish wanted to write Xiankong's character more fully, which was why there was a bug in the cultivation level. Chapter 2018. A few days later, Lin Sun and Boyazi returned to Xuanji Taoism sect quietly. As soon as he returned, Lin Sun began to prepare for his closed-door cultivation. There was only half a year before the Tao Discussion Grand Meeting. During this period, Lin Sun intended to improve his strength to another level. Yushu Peak, in front of the Blessed Enclave. Xianyue, please help me collect some information about the Tao Discussion Grand Meeting while I'm in closed-door cultivation. Lin Sun urged. Beside him, Jintian Xianyue, who was as beautiful as a fairy in snow-white clothes, nodded and said, "Don't worry, child. Of course, don't slack off in your cultivation. Take this." Lin Sun thought for a while, imprinted some of his insights and experiences in cultivation on the jade slip, and handed it over. Jintian Xianyue looked at it for a while, and her heart was filled with excitement and surprise. She knew the value of this jade slip too well. Although it was neither a cultivation method nor an inheritance, the cultivation experience and insights in it could be called a priceless treasure. It should be known that her child was almost invincible in the saint realm. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to easily win the first place in the Tao Discussion Grand Meeting of Yinzhou. "Thank you, child." Jintian Xianyue raised her head, and her clear eyes rippled with extraordinary splendor. Lin Sun smiled slightly and said nothing more. He turned around and walked into the Blessed Enclave. The old ancestor is right. It's a rare opportunity to cultivate with child, even if it's just a role like a Taoist attendant, Jintian Xianyue murmured. She possessed peerless charm and beauty, and she'd always been a proud and aloof person. However, since she'd started cultivating until now, no one had ever been able to make her so convinced. Boom! Inside the cave, Lin Sun sat cross-legged, and all kinds of grand phenomena appeared around him. Divine brilliance flowed, the light was like rain, and the sound of Tao rumbled. This was the first time Lin Sun had a real closed-door cultivation since he crossed the starry sky and arrived in the Hongmeng world by boat. Everything was for the sake of breaking through. As he breathed, wind and thunder surged, and the airflow turned into the shape of a dragon python. It breathed, and his whole body was shining and flowing with Tao rhythm. In his body, the essence, qi, and spirit roared like a volcanic eruption, flowing in his limbs and bones, and his whole body released a kind of limitless momentum like that of an immortal. Fortunately, they were in the blessed grotto heaven, and there were layers of restrictions concealing them. Otherwise, the commotion caused by his cultivation alone would cause the clouds to surge and a phenomenon to descend from the heavens. All this was because Lin Sun's accumulated Taoism was too strong and majestic. His body, cultivation, and soul were all unparalleled in the world. Just as Lin Sun and Jiang Xingque said before, if you want to achieve the unprecedented Tao, you must cultivate the unprecedented power. From this day on, Lin Sun immersed himself in cultivation, unaware of the passage of time. 1 month later, inside the blessed enclave of Jade Peak, a roar like the beginning of chaos resounded from Lin Sun's body. An endless divine light rain rushed out of his body, brilliant and magnificent. The aura around his body rose steadily like a rising tide, and it surged with all sorts of miraculous phenomena. There was a great abyss that swallowed the sky, a great furnace that refined the world, and numerous laws of the Tao interweaved together, and they were crystalline, resplendent, and dazzling. Bursts of natural Taoist sounds, like the chanting of the gods and the chanting of the Sanskrit. For a moment, his whole body was covered with a layer of sacred and majestic aura, as if he was the holy king of the world, eternal and immortal. He broke through. After a long time, when everything calmed down, Lin Sun opened his eyes. In an instant, a pair of abysses emerged, and the void suddenly collapsed, as if it was swallowed up. Late stage of the Saint King realm. Feeling the surging power in his body, Lin Sun felt an indescribable satisfaction in his heart. This was probably the reason why cultivators persisted in pursuing Tao. This transformation in the realm was like a nirvana rebirth, and there was a sense of extreme sublimation both physically and mentally. The feeling was wonderful. Lin Sun got up and walked out of the cave residence. As early as during the Tao discussion in Yinzhou, his cultivation was only a step away from breaking through. Now that he had broken through after a month of closed-door training, it was a matter of course. Now, Lin Sun wanted to try the power after the breakthrough. Dragon Peak. Hung Xiao of Xuanji Taoism sect temporarily lived on this peak during this period of time. Congratulations on breaking through and making further progress on the road of Tao. When Hung Xiao saw Lin Sun appear on the Dragon Peak after a month of closed-door training, he was stunned at first and then immediately showed a look of amazement and congratulated him. 1 month. His martial uncle seemed to have completely changed into a different person, and his cultivation had reached the late stage of the Saint King realm. This sort of shocking transformation caused Hung Xiao to be unable to help but be speechless. This is a living monster that can be said to be heaven-defying. You're too kind. I've only come this time to test my cultivation after my transformation, Lin Sun said with a smile. Hung Xiao pointed to himself, and his eyes were strange. You don't tell me you want to spar with me? Lin Sun said, it would be better if you're willing to give me some pointers. Hung Xiao smiled bitterly. In this world, who in the Saint realm dared to spar with a quasi-emperor so casually? However, Hung Xiao would never forget that long before Lin Sun had made his breakthrough, he had killed 6 quasi-emperor realm cultivators all by himself. That bloody scene caused his heart to tremble when he thought about it even now. Hong Yu. Hung Xiao summoned Hong Yu, the elder of Xuanji Taoism sect. Headmaster, what can I do for you? Soon, Hong Yu teleported over from the void. Jin Dui has just broken through and wants to test his combat strength. Come and spar with him, Hung Xiao said with a smile. As he spoke, he thought to himself, I'm the headmaster of a sect. Although I've long reached the perfection of the quasi-emperor realm, if I lose to Jin Dui in a spar, how can I put my face? But if I ask Hong Yu to help me, I won't have to worry about this problem. Hong Yu's lips twitched and his face darkened. Not only Hung Xiao, but he also heard of Lin Sun's fierce past achievements. How could he not understand the consequences of this spar when he heard such a request? Taking a deep breath, Hong Yu's smile stiffened and he tried to refuse. Headmaster, you may not know, but I've recently encountered some. Hung Xiao interrupted. It's just a spar. Don't refuse. Hong Yu felt bitter in his mouth, but he could only bite the bullet and agree. My young friend, this is just a spar. Please show mercy. He looked at Lin Sun with helplessness. A quasi-emperor actually took the initiative to ask a peak Saint King to show mercy. If news of this were spread, he would surely become the biggest laughingstock. But both Hung Xiao and Hong Yu knew very well that the young man in front of them could not be treated as a normal person at all. Lin Sun was startled at first. Then he smiled and said, in that case, please don't hold back when you fight. Hong Yu agreed readily. In fact, he didn't dare to hold back. Seeing this, Hung Xiao specially arranged a secret realm for the two to spar in order to be seen by others. In that case, if Hong Yu lost too badly, it wouldn't look good soon. Lin Sun and Hong Yu entered the secret realm. Hung Xiao waited outside. Moments later, Hong Yu's exasperated voice rang out from the secret realm. Headmaster, hurry up and get another helper. I'm no match for my young friend Jin Dui alone. Hung Xiao was stunned. He couldn't hold on so soon. It should be known that Hong Yu was the executioner of the Xuanji Dao sect. Among the quasi-emperors, his battle prowess was extremely ferocious and tyrannical. Hung Xiao realized that something was wrong and hurriedly sent a voice transmission. Taizheng, come quickly. Swoosh! The void rippled, and a burly figure appeared. This person was one of the elders of the Xuanji Dao sect, Taizheng, a late-stage quasi-emperor. Go to the secret realm and help Hong Yu fight, Hung Xiao said quickly. The situation was urgent, and he didn't have time to explain. Tai Jing's eyes widened, and he said in shock, "There's actually someone who can't get along with Elder Hongyu? I'll go take a look." His voice was filled with murderous intent, and he had already rushed into the secret realm before he finished speaking. Hung Xiao thought to himself, two quasi-emperors should be able to hold on for a while, right? But not long after, Tai Jing's voice was also heard, full of anger and shame. "Headmaster, how could you trick me like this?" Hung Xiao gasped and said, "Even the two of you can't?" "No." Hong Yu and Tai Jing's voices were heard in unison. Hung Xiao couldn't care about anything else and called out again, "Jin Jiuling, He Zhu, Shui Qiu." He called out three names in one breath. Not long after, three figures arrived one after another. They were both men and women with different appearances. They were all quasi-emperors of the Xuanji Dao sect. "He Zhu, you go in first," Hung Xiao said quickly. He Zhu was confused, but still entered the secret realm as he was told. At this time, Hung Xiao explained to the other two quasi-emperors, "Jin Di's cultivation has just broken through, so I sent some people to fight with him to verify his battle prowess." "Jin Dui," Jin Jiuling and Shui Qiu gasped in unison. They had witnessed Lin Sun killing 6 quasi-emperors, so how could they not know the consequences of such a fight? "Headmaster, Yizhu alone doesn't seem to be enough, does he?" Shui Qiu couldn't help asking. Hung Xiao shook his head and said, "He's not alone. Hong Yu and Tai Zheng both entered before Yizhu. So it's 3 elders fighting together." Jin Jiuling breathed a sigh of relief. Shui Qiu's expression changed drastically. "No, if the 3 of them can hold on, why did they call us here?" Jin Jiuling's heart trembled when he heard this. Just then, Hong Yu's voice came from the secret realm again. "It's not enough, it's not enough. This kid is too fierce, he's a monster. Send someone in quickly." His voice was filled with shock and anxiety. Shui Qiu and the others looked at each other in dismay. 3 quasi-emperors couldn't even suppress that kid? Hung Xiao gritted his teeth and said, "Now that things have come to this, we can't lose face." He waved his hand and said, "The 2 of you, go in together." Shui Qiu and the others felt an indescribable awkwardness in their hearts. So many quasi-emperors had to fight together just to suppress a young man of peerless Saint Realm. It would be very embarrassing no matter who won. Hung Xiao was anxious. "What are you waiting for? Go in quickly." Chapter 2019. After the 2 quasi-emperors, Shui Qiu and Jin Jiuling, entered the secret realm, it was equivalent to 5 quasi-emperors fighting fiercely with Lin Sun. Hung Zhao's lips twitched at the thought of this. Such a heaven-defying genius was as rare as a phoenix feather or a Qilin horn in the entire starry ancient path. At least, as far as Hung Xiao knew, he might only be seen in colossal entities like the 6 great Dao courts. Time ticked by. There were no more cries for help coming from the secret realm, which made Hung Xiao secretly heave a sigh of relief. If it still didn't work, then he would have to personally go into battle. Buzz, 10 minutes later, the entrance to the secret realm rippled, and Lin Sun's figure staggered out. His clothes were tattered, and his hair was disheveled, making him look rather disheveled. Upon closer inspection, his face was pale, and his aura was weak. Hung Zhao's eyelids twitched, and he asked with concern, "Young friend, did they fight too hard and hurt you?" Lin Sun shook his head and smiled. "No, it was a very satisfying battle. Thank you for your help." Hung Xiao smiled. That's good. Young friend, you just experienced a great battle, so you should go back and adjust your breathing to stabilize your realm." Lin Sun nodded and left. As he watched him leave, Hung Xiao couldn't help but sigh emotionally. This little martial uncle of my founding master is really a mess. Wait. Suddenly, Hung Xiao realized that something was wrong. Why hadn't Hong Yu, Tai Zheng, and the others come out? He entered the secret realm in a flash, and when he saw Hong Yu and the others sitting cross-legged on the ground, Hung Zhao's eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. Whether it was Hong Yu, Tai Zheng, Jin Jiuling, Shui Qiu, or He Zhu, they were all badly battered and unrecognizable, where their clothes were in tatters, and they looked as miserable as beggars. These were 5 quasi-emperors, famous figures of the Xuanji Dao sect. But now, they looked as if they had been brutally beaten up one by one. Their appearance made Heng Xiao somewhat unable to bear to watch. That kid is a monster. Sigh, I'm getting old. I'm really useless now. If anyone dares to leak what happened today, I'll definitely fight him to the death. Hong Yu and the others gnashed their teeth with grief and indignation on their faces. At this moment, Heng Xiao felt more and more fortunate that he didn't go to fight with Lin Sun in person. Otherwise, he would have ended up like everyone else. After returning to the cave residence, Lin Sun began to meditate with his legs crossed. In the previous battle with the 5 quasi-emperor experts, both sides had agreed not to use any treasures or trump cards. But even so, with his current combat strength, he could already resist the joint attack of 5 quasi-emperors. Hong Yu and Tai Zheng looked miserable before. In fact, it was because they were small in number at the beginning and couldn't bear Lin Sun's full strength. It was not until Xue Qiu and Jin Jiuling finally joined the battle that Lin Sun felt great pressure and threat. In the battle, he was suppressed. However, Lin Sun was very confident that if he used treasures or taboo supernatural powers like Forbidden Death, he would not be the one to be defeated in the end. After experiencing this battle, Lin Sun had a deep understanding of his own combat strength and finally understood the mysteries of the quasi-emperor realm. A quasi-emperor transcended all saints and was infinitely close to the emperor realm. At this realm, a cultivator's 3 types of cultivation, body refinement, soul refinement, and qi refinement, would condense the divine fire of the great Tao. It was also known as the 3rd layer of flame of the quasi-emperor. Condensing one type of divine fire of the great Tao could be seen as the 1st layer of the quasi-emperor realm. Condensing 2 types of divine fire of the great Tao was the 2nd layer of the quasi-emperor realm. When condensing 3 types of divine fire of the great Tao, body refinement, qi refinement, and spirit refinement, one would be known as the 3rd layer of the quasi-emperor realm. 99% of the quasi-emperors in the world were stuck in the 1st layer of the quasi-emperor realm. The reason was that these cultivators, from the beginning of their cultivation, focused on qi refinement, spirit refinement, or body refinement. It was precisely because he was limited to only one path of Tao that even if he started to cultivate the other 2 paths of Tao in the future, because of his great Tao foundation, he would be stuck at the 1st stage of the great Tao after he became a quasi-emperor, unable to break through. For example, the quasi-emperors that Lin Sun had killed before, whether it was Chu Rao and Kong Yin from the Imperial Kong clan or the 6 quasi-emperors from the Hellion clan, almost all of them were in the 1st layer of the quasi-emperor realm. Similarly, like Hong Yu, Tai Zheng, and the other 4 quasi-emperors from the 4 Stars Tao sect, only Hong Yu was in the 2nd layer of the quasi-emperor realm. The other 4 were stuck in the 1st layer of the quasi-emperor realm. And according to Hong Yu, in the entire 4 Stars Tao sect, only Sect Master Heng Xiao was in the 3rd layer of the quasi-emperor realm. So far, Lin Sun only knew that there were 3 checkpoints in the quasi-emperor realm, each more difficult than the last. The core was that the divine fire of the great Tao was extremely difficult to condense. Even if some old monsters had lived for countless years, because they were unable to condense a 2nd divine fire of the great Tao, their cultivation stagnated and they were unable to improve. In addition, there was also a difference between the quasi-emperor realm and the peak. The difference between a peak quasi-emperor and an ordinary quasi-emperor was like the difference between a peak Saint King and an ordinary Saint King. It was like the difference between heaven and earth. But according to Hong Yu and the others, there were many peak figures in the world, and peak saint realm was not uncommon. Only peak quasi-emperors were extremely rare. The reason was that when breaking through the saint realm, one would encounter an extremely terrifying and peerless calamity, especially for peak saint kings. If they wanted to forcibly prove their Tao and step into the peak quasi-emperor realm, there was almost no hope of success. Only 1 in 10,000 can step into the peak quasi-emperor realm. This was the consensus of the entire Starry Sky world. After understanding this news, Lin Sun finally realized that with his current combat strength, he might be able to kill the existence of the quasi-emperor realm across a great realm. But if he encountered an extremely rare and terrifying figure like the quasi-emperor, he would definitely be in danger. Peak quasi-emperor, 1 in 10,000. I wonder what kind of calamity I will encounter when I break through the Saint Realm and want to achieve the quasi-emperor realm. Lin Sun couldn't help but shiver at the thought of this. The road to the peak was always full of dangers and taboos, terrifying and unpredictable. From this day on, Lin Sun once again went into seclusion. In terms of cultivation, he was already at the late stage of the Saint King realm, and it was impossible for him to make a breakthrough in a short period of time. His focus was on refining martial arts and comprehending the Great Tao. In the third month of Lin Sun's seclusion, in the cave residence, Lin Sun's body was shining, flowing with a blazing rain of light, and in the divine palace of lungs in his body, there was an amazing rhythm of life. Soon, with a sound like the beginning of heaven and earth, a dazzling white light suddenly rushed out from the spiritual platform above Lin Sun's head. It was as brilliant as the sun, sharp and dazzling. Gradually, the white light condensed and transformed into a figure that wore a white robe and was suffused with a terrifying and fierce aura. He was like a peerlessly sharp divine sword that had descended from the heavens, and his light shone coldly into the 9 heavens. Platinum Taoist body. Gold, one of the 5 elements, was the innate source of killing, the sharpness of all things, the power of killing, and the essence of void Taoist Qi. This was a doppelganger of the great Tao bred by the platinum divine embryo. Its aura was peerless, fierce, and domineering, with a charm of invincibility and invincibility. This was also the 5th doppelganger of the great Tao that Lin Sun had condensed so far. So far, the 5 viscera and divine embryos had all condensed into the doppelganger of the great Tao, so that Lin Sun's cultivation of the Golden Court Scripture had also reached the consummation of the 5 flavors realm. It should be known that the Golden Court Scripture was divided into 4 realms, namely 5 skanda, 5 colors, 5 flavors, and 5 virtues. 5 skanda was the accumulation of spiritual qi in the 5 viscera. 5 colors was the condensation of the spiritual qi into the 5 viscera and divine embryos. 5 flavors was the cultivation of the 5 elements Taoist body with the 5 viscera and divine embryos, which was the current realm of Lin Sun. Next was the 5 virtues realm. When reached this realm, the 5 doppelganger of the great Tao would have their own spiritual awareness and cultivation, and their cultivation would not be weaker than the original. However, the 5 virtues realm was extremely obscure, involving the mystery of dividing cultivation and spiritual awareness. With Lin Sun's current realm, he could not comprehend and control it. According to his speculation, when he had the cultivation of the quasi-emperor realm, he might have the foundation to comprehend the mystery of the 5 virtues realm. Boom! As Lin Sun's essence, qi and spirit were integrated into the platinum body, countless wonderful insights came to his mind like a tide. After meditating in silence for a long time, the white-robed Lin Sun's heart moved, and the qi around him suddenly roared. Faintly, countless sharp platinum qi swept out of his pores, just like hundreds of millions of sword edges emerging at the same time, emitting a frightening light. The nearby void was torn apart, making a sizzling sound. Looking from a distance, Lin Sun was like a heavenly sword coming to the world, showing off his sharpness, as if he was going to cut the sky, the earth, and everything in the void. Condense. Lin Sun raised his hand, and the billions of misty platinum qi around him gathered in his palm, and finally turned into a little light. The light was condensed to the extreme, sharp, and dazzling, as if it could tear people's souls apart. The entire Immortal's Cave was instantly plunged into a terrifying and austere atmosphere. But in the end, with Lin Sun's thoughts, the dazzling and sharp light gradually disappeared in his palm. But Lin Sun couldn't calm down, because this supernatural power was called Stab of Sharpness. It was the talent power of the platinum body, and the power of one stab could shock ghosts and gods. According to Lin Sun's estimation, once the stab of sharpness was out, even a figure in the first level of the quasi-emperor realm would not be able to avoid it, because the stab was too fast, too sharp, and too overbearing. It gathered the power of the platinum body in one point, and suddenly burst out with the most terrible power. Greenwood Taoist body controls the power of life and death. Yellow Earth Taoist body controls the seal of all living beings. Blackwater Taoist body controls the 3,000 drownings. Red Fire Taoist body controls the burning eyes. And Platinum Taoist body controls the stab of sharpness. The lethality of this talent is undoubtedly the sharpest among the 5 major Taoist bodies. Lin Sun silently comprehended the mystery of the platinum body and was amazed in his heart. 5 doppelgangers of Taoist body, 5 kinds of supreme talents, and 5 kinds of completely different powers. Such a Taoist scripture could absolutely be called unprecedented. This caused Gu Yupu's attainments in the Grand Tao to be even more shocking and extraordinary. Chapter 2020. After cultivating the Platinum Tao body, Lin Sun put all his effort into perfecting the Tao domain. With a flip of his palm, the crystal clear void great Tao disc that was round like a moon appeared. A pair of mysterious symbols that looked like swimming fish on the disc deduced countless mysterious marks of the Tao. The void great Tao disc could help cultivators deduce and comprehend the essence of the great Tao. Lin Sun took a deep breath and immersed himself in it. In an instant, the power of the great Tao that he controlled appeared in the void great Tao disc like marks. For example, the star-devouring Tao, the true dragon Tao, the Tao of water and fire, the Tao of Taiji, the Tao of immortality, all of them appeared in the void great Tao disc, and then a clear and marvelous scene was reflected in Lin Sun's mind. As he seriously comprehended and deduced, a strange power also surged out from the void great Tao plate, causing his comprehension and deduction speed to suddenly increase by a large margin. Countless areas that were vague, obscure, and puzzling in the past were solved one by one. The comprehension that Lin Sun obtained after the puzzles were solved caused him to be completely immersed in it. He was so happy that he couldn't extricate himself. At the same time, the Tao domain appeared behind him. Sometimes it transformed into a furnace, sometimes it transformed into an abyss, and sometimes it returned to chaos. As Lin Sun continued to deduce and comprehend, the power of the great Tao that was gathered in it became stronger and stronger. Time flew, and several months had passed unknowingly. While Lin Sun was cultivating in seclusion, a storm was brewing in the outside world. As the time of the Tao Discussion Grand Meeting approached, the Tao Discussion selection in the other 48 states of the primordial world, excluding the Central Earth state, had all come to an end. Just like the Cloud Prefecture, the top 10 experts of these prefectures were chosen through the Tao Discussion selection method. The 48 states represented that there were 480 peerless experts that had emerged through the selection, and they would soon participate in the Tao Discussion Grand Meeting. The primordial world was vast and boundless. Even if the Central Earth state was disregarded, there were billions of living beings in the other states. But in the end, only 480 people were qualified to participate in the Tao Discussion Grand Meeting. Without a doubt, these 480 people were definitely the most dazzling and outstanding group of experts among the Ultimate Sage King. However, the ones that received the most attention were the first-place candidates from each prefecture. Miss Xianyu, this is all the information we've gathered recently. It lists the names, cultivation levels, and origins of the top 10 people in each province. In the 4-star Tao sect, Jiang Heng, Ji Qian, and the other successors handed a jade slip to Jin Tian Xianyue. Thanks a lot. After expressing his gratitude, Jin Tian Xianyue began to flip through the books. Her gaze fell directly on the number 1 cultivators of each continent, temporarily ignoring all the others. Wang Yichen, the champion of the Azure Province's Tao Discussion Selection, the strongest core successor of the Azure Province's number 1 sect, the Spirit Snow Sword sect. His cultivation base is at the Perfection Saint King stage, and he's known as the Azure Province's number 1 Saint King, of the Sword Dao. Ming Qiang, the champion of the Nether Province's Dao discussion selection. He is the leader of the underworld Dao sect's younger generation, and he cultivates the underworld god Dao scripture. He is known as the #1 sacred king among soul cultivators in the underworld province. Su Qingjian, the champion of the Star Province's Dao sparring selection, the strongest Saint King of the Astral Battle sect. As she read through the names one by one, Jintian Xianyue felt an indescribable pressure surge in her heart. Merely the experts that were ranked first in the 48 continents on this list could be said to be outstanding figures of the present age, the outstanding talents of their respective states, and they shocked the masses. Even if the #1 cultivators of each prefecture can't compare to young master, they should at least be peerless experts like Lu Dubu and Wu Huang. Jintian Xianyue muttered in her heart. These were merely the dazzling figures that had emerged from the 48 prefectures. According to her knowledge, the core figures of the 6 great Dao courts and 10 great combat clans of the Central Earth State were bound to be even stronger, and each one was more monstrous and abnormal than the last. Moreover, it wasn't just limited to the primordial world that could participate in the Dao discussion grand meeting this time. There were similarly countless peerless and monstrous geniuses from the other worlds in the starry sky that had arrived successively, and they were eyeing the Dao discussion grand meeting covetously. The Cloud Prefecture Dao discussion allowed us to deeply understand what it means by there's always someone stronger out there. Jiang Heng sighed with emotion at the side. Now, the Dao discussion grand meeting will be held in another month. At that time, how many inconceivable and peerless experts would have surged into appearance? These words caused Ji, Qianning, and the other disciples of the Dao sect to sigh endlessly. In this world, there would never be a lack of more formidable and formidable figures. Would anyone dare to call themselves truly invincible? Would anyone dare to say they wouldn't lose? After a long time, Jintian Xianyue carefully put the list away. She hadn't forgotten that her young master had instructed her before he entered into closed-door cultivation to gather more information related to the Dao discussion grand meeting. Presently, some of the peerless geniuses of the Central Earth Prefecture have already targeted the top figures of the 48 prefectures. Ji Qian said abruptly, "It's even to the extent that some people have spread the word that when these top figures enter the Central Earth Prefecture, they'll make a show of strength before the Dao discussion grand meeting even begins." As soon as these words were spoken, it caused the hearts of many to shake. If the primordial world was said to be the #1 world in the starry sky, and it was the #1 world that everyone in the world knew of, then the Central Earth Prefecture would be the #1 prefecture in the primordial world. The 6 great Dao courts, the 10 great war clans, and many terrifying Emperor clan forces were all located there. As a result, countless dazzling and monstrous figures had emerged from there. For example, why was this Dao discussion grand meeting able to attract the attention of all the heavens in the starry sky? It was because the 6 great Dao courts were hosting this grand meeting. And among the colossal forces like the 6 great Dao courts, which of them didn't have a few monstrous figures that were so powerful that they couldn't be measured by common sense? If these people targeted the top figures of the 48 prefectures, it was indeed enough to make everyone pay attention to them. This isn't a lie. According to what I know, the #1 core disciple of the primordial Dao court, Kong Zhao, who has the title of primordial genius, once said that before the Dao discussion grand meeting began, he would make all the top figures of the prefectures lower their heads. Ji Qian said. As soon as these words were spoken, Jintian Xianyue couldn't help but frown. Kong Zhao, how could she not have heard of him? This person was ranked 5th on the King's Sage ranking of all heavens, and he had shaken the starry sky hundreds of years ago. He came from the Emperor clan, the Kong clan, and had the title of Primordial Genius, as well as the title of Kong clan. There were countless titles and rumors about him. Back on the boat, young master killed many experts of the Kong clan. After arriving in the primordial world, you even killed Kong Yu and the others from the primordial Dao court. If Kong Zhao finds out about these things, he will definitely point the finger at young master. Jintian Xianyue recalled some of the past and felt somewhat worried. Which on the top 10 on the King Sage ranking was not a famous peerless genius in the starry sky. And Kong Zhao was ranked 5th. However, young master is not someone ordinary people can compare to. If Kong Zhao really dares to cause trouble for young master, the outcome is still uncertain. Jin Tian Xianyue fell into deep thought. Even Kong Zhao, who is ranked 5th, dares to say such words. I really don't know how terrifying those ranked before him are, someone murmured. As far as I know, those ranked in the top 10 on the King Sage ranking would have long broken through and become quasi-emperors if they weren't qualified to participate in this Tao Exchange Grand Meeting. Someone said in a low voice, in short, these monstrous existences are all suppressing their cultivation level. Whoever encounters them at the Tao Exchange Grand Meeting will be unlucky. That's not necessarily true. As far as I know, the King Sage ranking is only a list. It can't possibly list all the powerful figures in the world, someone said in a low voice. For example, among those peerless geniuses from other worlds in the starry sky, there must be peerless figures who are not weaker than Kong Zhao. Let's not talk about others. Fellow Jin Di's name doesn't even appear on the King Sage ranking, but he's now the number 1 person in our Cloud Prefecture. These words attracted many voices of agreement. That's right. I also heard that because this Tao Exchange Grand Meeting has attracted the attention of all the heavens, the Black-Yellow Tao Court has also decided to re-rank the King Sage ranking at this Grand Meeting. Ji Qian suddenly said, for example, regardless of fellow Jin Di's ranking in the Tao Exchange Grand Meeting, with his current battle strength, he can definitely easily be ranked on the ranking. As for his final ranking, it will depend on his performance at the Tao Exchange Grand Meeting. Jin Tian Xianyue listened silently and did not express her opinion, but she knew that at the Tao Exchange Grand Meeting, with young master's battle strength, he would most likely encounter some unexpected enemies. After all, the influence of this grand meeting could be described as unprecedented and rare. Geniuses, monstrous geniuses, and geniuses of the same cultivation level would gather together. Their strength would only be more abnormal than the last. I just don't know what rank young master will obtain at the Tao Exchange Grand Meeting. Jin Tian Xianyue was stunned. Discussions like this had recently occurred in almost every state in the primordial world. It was unknown how many major forces and cultivators were looking forward to the arrival of such a grand meeting. A storm was brewing all over the world, and the news about the Tao Exchange Grand Meeting was getting more and more intense. As for Lin Sun and the other top figures of the 48 states, they had become the focus of attention of all parties. Of course, people were concerned about the name Jin Di. Similarly, in the Central Earth Tao state, the list of Lin Sun and the other 48 top figures was also presented to the 6 great Tao courts, the 10 great battle clans, and other major forces. Lin Sun, who was in seclusion, was unaware of all this. Recently, with the help of the Void Great Way Plate, his Tao field had become more and more powerful, and it had faintly shown a kind of extremely perfect charm. But after all, it was still a little lacking. It still doesn't work. On this day, Lin Sun woke up from meditation and frowned. He was only 1 step away from deducing his Tao field to the extreme, but it was this step that was like a barrier. Lin Sun had tried thousands of times, but he could not break it. Chapter 2021. It seems that it's not enough to just rely on secluded cultivation. Lin Sun pondered for a long time and finally gave up the idea of continuing to try. He stood up and walked out of the cave residence. On this day, there was only 1 month left before the opening of the Tao Discussion Grand Meeting. Lin Sun walked out of secluded cultivation. 5 months of secluded cultivation had caused his cultivation to undergo many transformations. His cultivation had broken through to the peak late-stage Saint King realm, and he could fight against 5 quasi-emperor realm experts. He had condensed the platinum Tao body, mastered the innate divine ability Thorn of Sharpness, and attained the perfection of the 5-taste realm of the Great Way Golden Court Scripture, and possessed 5 Great Way doppelgangers. With the help of the Void Great Way Plate, his Tao domain had been further improved, and he was only 1 step away from reaching the extreme perfection. All kinds of transformations and gains had caused Lin Sun's combat strength to undergo earth-shaking changes, and he was completely different from 5 months ago. Young master, these are some news and information about the Tao Discussion Grand Meeting. There was a trace of joy in Jean Tian Xuanyue's clear eyes, and she handed a jade slip to Lin Sun with both hands. After not seeing him for 5 months, she keenly sensed that her young master's aura had become more and more unfathomable. Lin Sun sat under a pine tree, took the jade slip, and casually flipped through it. Wang Yichen, the first person of the Azure Province, Ming Qiang, the first person of the Star Province, Su Qingjian, each and every one of these dazzling names was like a legend, and each of them had great luck, great boldness, and a shocking foundation. However, Lin Sun's heart was calm. Ever since he possessed the combat strength to kill quasi-emperors across realms, there were very few people in the same generation that could enter his eyes. Jean Tian Xinyue brewed tea with her bare hands, and occasionally glanced at Lin Sun with a smile that even she herself was unaware of. Soon, Lin Sun noticed a name, the first person of the Copper Province, Xian Jiuyin. The image of a handsome young man in linen clothes with a cheeky smile appeared in his mind. Back then, when he was crossing the starry sky on the boat, this young man in linen clothes who called himself Little Gio liked to lie on the wall and watch the fun. Lin Sun did not expect that this guy would become the first person of the Tao discussion selection in the Copper Province. Looking at the information on the jade slip, Xian Jiuyin was a descendant of the ancient emperor clan, the Xian clan. He grasped the Taoist domain Book of Profundity. His battle strength was so strong that no one in the Bronze Province Saint King realm could match him. The Book of Profundity. Lin Sun couldn't help but be curious. How miraculous would such a Tao realm be? Soon, Lin Sun saw another familiar name, Ling Kezi. This was a charmingly naive young monk from the ancient Southern Temple, which was also known as the Little Western Paradise. Lin Sun clearly remembered that when Ling Kezi saw him in Kunlun ruins, he seemed especially timid and fearful, treating him like a scourge. This left a deep impression on Lin Sun. Lin Sun didn't expect that this seemingly timid monk would be the first in the Tao discussion selection of Demon Province. The Devil Province was like the territory of the Devil World. It was the world of devil cultivators, and it was also seen as the world of great danger in the primordial world. Such a cowardly Ling Kezi had actually leaped up to become the #1 expert in this state, and this was truly inconceivable. According to the records, Ling Kezi possessed the talent of pure Buddha heart and mastered the Tao realm Sangarama Bodhi, which had the power to subdue people without fighting. Interesting. Lin Sun smiled and continued to read the jade slips. After a while, he finished reading all the information in the jade slips. Child, have you ever heard of Kong Zhao? Jean Tian Xinyue suddenly asked. Who is he? Lin Sun was stunned. Immediately, Jean Tian Xinyue introduced Kong Zhao's identity to Lin Sun, such as talent of untainted land, best of Kong family, 5th on the Holy King list, and peerless genius. Lin Sun was surprised after hearing this. When he heard that Kong Zhao threatened to make all the top experts in all provinces bow their heads before the Tao discussion conference, Lin Sun immediately laughed. The descendants of the Imperial Kong family were all more arrogant than the other. Of course, this was Lin Sun's own opinion. To other cultivators, Kong Zhao was definitely a terrifying existence that could make anyone fear him, and he was also qualified to make such a threat. Child, you once killed Kong Yu and the others with the identity of Yuxian. Although you're not worried that Kong Zhao will see through your identity, you should be careful if you meet him at the Tao discussion conference. Jean Tian Xinyue warned. Lin Sun made a sound of acknowledgement and did not comment further. Back in the Kunlun ruins, he had killed countless experts from the 6 Tao courts and the 10 war clans. With his current combat strength, it was impossible for him to fear anyone of the same generation. After chatting for a while, Hing Xiao hurried over. It's good that you've come out of seclusion. I've just received news that Guan Su, the sect master of the Great Void Tao sect, will lead the top 10 of the Tao discussion conference to the Central Plains Prefecture tomorrow morning. Hung Xiao said. Lin Sun and Jin Tian Xianhua looked at each other and nodded in agreement. One of them was ranked first in the Tao discussion conference, while the other was ranked seventh. Both of them were qualified to participate in the Tao discussion conference. If that's the case, let's depart immediately. On that day, Heng Xiao left with Lin Sun and Jin Tian Xianhua and headed to the Great Void Dao Mountain. The Great Void Dao sect. When Lin Sun and Jin Tian Xianhua arrived in a grand hall, they saw Lu Dubu, Wu Huang, Su Muhan, Xie Yuhua, Wang Tu, Leng Xiujia, Tung Yichen, Gue Shanxing, and the others had already arrived. This guy's aura has become more and more obscure. It seems like his cultivation has improved again during this period of time. When they saw Lin Sun and Jin Tian Xianhua, many people in the hall looked over. Especially when they noticed Lin Sun's change, many people's eyes narrowed. At the same time, Lin Sun also noticed that whether it was Lu Dubu, Wu Huang, or the others, all of them had changed significantly during these 5 months. Clearly, he was not the only one who had made a breakthrough during this period of time. It was the same for Lu Dubu and the others. Everyone is here now. Tomorrow morning, I will bring all of you to the Central Earth Dao State to participate in the Dao Discussion Festival organized by the 6 major Dao courts. The figure of the Great Void Dao Sect's headmaster, Guan Su, appeared in the hall. His words caused the atmosphere to fall silent. Remember, no matter which sect you come from or what your identity is, once you arrive at the Central Earth Dao State, you will only have one identity, the cultivators of the Cloud State. Guan Su said. Later, I will pass you all the information I have learned about the Dao Discussion Festival. You can take advantage of tonight to have some exchanges. After reminding Lin Sun and the others about some trivial matters, Guan Su gave each of them a jade scroll. The information recorded in the jade scroll was extremely shocking. It was different from what the outside world had heard. It listed in detail the names of the cultivators from the 6 major Dao courts, the 10 major battle clans, and other giants who would participate in the Dao Discussion Festival. At the same time, there was also information about the peerless geniuses from other worlds in the starry sky. These people would also participate in the Dao Discussion Festival. In the hall, only Lin Sun and the others were left. They were all studying the contents of the Jade Scrolls. The first thing Lin Sun saw was a list of the most dazzling cultivators. Shang Xin, a core disciple of the Panwu Dao court, ranked 10th on the All Heavens King Sage ranking, a descendant of the primordial Emperor Shang clan. He is extremely talented and has an extraordinary foundation. He has mastered the Dao realm, dominator of the 8 desolates. The ancestor of the primordial Emperor Shang clan was the same as the ancestors of the Kong clan, Su clan, and Kuan clan. He was one of the 7 primordial demon emperors and was known as the Cloud Bank Demon Emperor. Tu Qinjue, a core disciple of the Heaven and Earth Dao court, ranked 9th on the All Heavens King Sage ranking, a pure-blooded descendant of the Black Water Battle clan, one of the 10 major battle clans. He has mastered the Dao realm, death of all flowing water. Zhu Fiyu, a core disciple of the Demon Court, ranked 8th on the All Heavens King Sage ranking. Yan Yuo, a core disciple of the Black Yellow Dao Court, ranked 7th on the All Heavens King Sage ranking. Feng Bailing, a pure-blooded descendant of the primordial Emperor Feng clan, ranked 6th on the All Heavens King Sage ranking. Kong Zhao. Lin Sun only had one feeling when he read the names one by one. It seemed that the top 10 of the All Heavens King Sage ranking were almost completely occupied by the heirs of the 6 major Dao courts. I didn't expect Mi Wuya, Huang Fu Xiaono, and Ling Hongzhuang to actually participate in this Dao discussion. Suddenly, a surprised voice rang out in the hall. Wang Tu's childlike face was covered in a solemn expression. The others also turned to look at him with stern expressions. Mi Wuya, the number 1 core disciple of the Panwu Dao court, had dominated the first place on the All Heavens King Sage, ranking for 600 years. He stood alone, and no one could shake his position to this day. His name was widely spread throughout the starry sky ancient path. He was a legendary figure that was close to being truly invincible. Huang Fu Xiaonong, the number 1 core disciple of the Universe Dao court, ranked 2nd on the All Heavens King Sage ranking. In the era when Mi Wuya had yet to rise to power, Huang Fu Xiaonong had reigned supreme on the All Heavens King Sage ranking. This was also a terrifying monster that could not be measured by common sense. Ling Hongzhuang, on the other hand, was a core heir of the Black-Yellow Dao court. Her rise could be described as a miracle. In less than 100 years, her ranking on the All Heavens King Sage ranking had skyrocketed until she firmly occupied the third place. Many people guessed that if Ling Hongzhuang was given a little more time, she would have a great chance of charging for the first or second place. Now, whether it was Mi Wuya, Huang Fu Xiaonong, or Ling Hongzhuang, all of them would obviously participate in the Dao discussion. No one had heard of this news before, and it caused the hearts of Lu Debu, Wu Huang, Xie Yuhua, and the others to churn. Looks like the Dao discussion this time is far more troublesome than I imagined, Su Muhan sighed softly. Every name on the list of names on the jade slip given by Guan Su is like a mountain that pressed down on one's heart, causing them to feel invisible pressure. It's not just troublesome, it's simply abnormal. Those peerless monsters from the other worlds in the starry sky are not to be trifled with. Tung Yichen smiled bitterly. I even suspect that people like us will probably be reduced to foils when we participate in the Dao discussion. His words caused everyone's expressions to waver indeterminately. Even Lu Dubu and Wu Huang frowned and carefully studied the contents of the jade slip, not daring to slack off in the slightest. Chapter 2022. The contents of the jade slips were indeed enough to make any cultivator tremble in fear. But Lin Sun was not one of them. His state of mind had already changed when he was able to resist the combined attacks of 5 quasi-emperor experts without the help of any treasures. While those of the same realm might still be staring at the top figures of the same realm, Lin Sun had already begun to think about how he would deal with quasi-emperor Zhu Shi if he encountered him. Moreover, Lin Sun had not been interested in the Dao discussion at all in the beginning. If senior brother Li Xianwei had not said that the purpose of this Dao discussion was to head to the forbidden ancient immortal area to search for treasures of chaos, Lin Sun would not have participated at all. Brother Jean, what do you think of this Dao discussion? Lu Dubu suddenly asked Lin Sun for his opinion. Everyone else in the hall immediately looked over. Lin Sun was the well-deserved number 1 in the Dao discussion of Yinzhou. It was impossible for anyone to ignore his opinion. Lin Sun was taken aback, then said after some thought, "It's too early to say anything now. When the Dao discussion really begins, the results will be revealed." This answer disappointed many people. But after thinking about it carefully, they realized that Lin Sun's opinion was not unreasonable. It was true that almost all those who participated in this Dao discussion were top-notch figures of the world, and there were even some who could be said to be abnormal and ruthless. But who dare to say that people like them would not have a chance to shine in the Dao discussion? In short, how could they decide who was better if they did not fight? The next morning, a treasured ship flowing with divine light rose from the Great Void Dao sect, carrying the Great Void Dao sect leader Guan Su, Lin Sun, and the other 9 people toward the Central Earth Dao province. At the same time, the same scene was playing out in various parts of the primordial world. The top 10 experts who stood out in the Dao discussion selection were all led by other experts to the Central Earth Dao province from all directions. This grand Dao discussion of an unprecedented scale is finally about to arrive. The world will gather in the Central Earth Dao province because of this. I wonder how many dazzling figures will stand out in this grand event. Let's wait and see. All over the primordial world, everyone was discussing this, and countless cultivators felt anticipation in their hearts. This was an unprecedented grand event. It could be foreseen that there would definitely be numerous peerless geniuses and peerless heroes that would encounter each other during the Dao discussion, discuss the Dao, and compete for supremacy. In an unknown place in the primordial world, it was surrounded by mountains and deserted. On a frozen lake, a figure sat cross-legged, holding a fishing rod in his hand. He was motionless, like an unchanging boulder. Whoosh! A ray of divine light suddenly flashed over from the extremely distant horizon. The fishing figure still didn't move. However, the fishing rod in his hand shook slightly, binding the divine rainbow and bringing it back in front of him. I've been sitting alone in the frozen lake for 300 years, tempering my state of mind until now. Finally, I've waited for this opportunity. A deep voice sounded. The motionless figure that was like a boulder stood up and stretched his waist. Boom! The frozen lake in front of him suddenly exploded into pieces, and the clouds in the sky and the nearby space suddenly collapsed. At this moment, a boundlessly terrifying and sharp aura charged out from the figure, and it caused the nearby mountains to tremble and everything to rustle. The figure's clothes fluttered, his eyes were like divine blades, and he was mighty like a god. Miwia, Huang Fu Xiaonong, Ling Hong Zhuang. Haha, after so many years, I wonder if all of you still remember me. Yuruhua? A wisp of coldness arose on the corners of the man's mouth, and then his figure vanished into thin air. Boom! After he vanished, an enormous beast with a terrifying aura charged out from the frozen lake, and it let out a heaven-shaking roar. Its scales were covered in dense and obscure markings of the Tao. This was a primitive variant beast of this unknown place, and it possessed a cultivation at the quasi-emperor realm. However, it had been frozen here for 300 years and suppressed beneath a fishing rod. The primordial world. Young master, the time has come. An old servant said respectfully with his head lowered. There was a well of blood that surged with demonic smoke on the ground before him. As the old servant's voice faded, a feminine voice rang out from the depths of the well. Has the Tao discussion grand meeting begun? Yes, the old servant said respectfully. It's finally here. If it still hadn't come, I don't know when I would have woken up again, as the feminine voice rang out. A strand of black, demonic chi suddenly charged out from the well of blood, and it shot into the sky. In an instant, it seemed like night had descended, and the surrounding area was covered in deep black, demonic chi. The old servant's body trembled, and he revealed a look of astonishment. He was a senior quasi-emperor, but at this moment, he felt an indescribable chill that made his heart palpitate. It was also at this moment that a slender figure walked out from the surging, ink-like, demonic chi. His clothes were whiter than snow, and he was completely spotless. His features were gentle and handsome, and his entire body flowed with the aura of light. However, as he walked, mysterious demonic diagrams appeared beneath his feet. Jibai, a unique name that almost no one knew of, a peerless figure that was silent within the demon-suppressing bloodwell. Jibai guarded the darkness. His body surged with light, and he walked in the darkness. At the same time, one by one, powerful figures that were hidden in various parts of the vast primordial world, and even some peerless monstrous geniuses that did not care about the Tao discussion grand meeting, began to appear one after another, and they all surged towards the same place. Central Earth Tao Province. Black-Yellow Tao Court. Inside a simple and ancient grass hut. This Tao discussion grand meeting involves a supreme fortune in the ancient immortal forbidden area. When the curtains really open, all the eyes in the heavens will definitely be watching closely. Pass down the order, send a message to the other Tao courts, and let them each send a martial emperor to preside over this grand meeting. Inside the grass hut, an inconspicuous old man dressed in an old Tao item, with a lean appearance and no aura fluctuations all over his body, sat cross-legged on a praying mat and spoke indifferently. Yes, outside the grass hut, a respectful voice that came from the bottom of the heart rang out. The owner of the voice was a middle-aged man with a handsome appearance and an elegant bearing. He wore a feathered crown on his head, and he looked dignified and extraordinary. This person was the patriarch of the Black-Yellow Tao Court, Tai Shu Hong, an extraordinary figure whose name shook the world and deterred all the heavens. Moreover, he was a figure that had already stepped foot into the martial emperor realm in the primordial era. However, at this moment, his expression was solemn and respectful, because the person cultivating in the grass hut was a living fossil of the Black-Yellow Tao Court, an ancestor of the Tao who was like a divine needle that stabilized the seas. Ancestor, do you have any other instructions? Tai Shu Hong asked softly. The Tao Discussion Grand Meeting seems to be just a competition between juniors, but it actually involves the battle for the Chaos Treasure in the ancient immortal forbidden area. Even martial emperors can't remain indifferent. Within the grass hut, the old man in a Taoist robe said, "But no matter what, the rules for this Tao discussion have already been set. Since the Tao Discussion Grand Meeting is held in our black-yellow Tao court, then this rule should be upheld by us, and no one can go against it." Tai Shu Hong nodded. "Ancestor, don't worry. Speaking of which, I'm also looking forward to seeing who will obtain the Chaos Treasure that was born in the ancient immortal forbidden area when the Tao discussion comes to an end." The old man in a Taoist robe spoke slowly. "It isn't just Ancestor. All the powers in the world are bound to be extremely concerned about this matter. After all, possessing a Chaos Treasure that comes from an unknown place is equivalent to possessing the foundation to establish a Tao court." Tai Shu Hong's eyes flowed with a profound divine light. The appearance of the black-yellow Tao court was similarly because of a Chaos Treasure, the black-yellow Tao steel. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that the reason the black-yellow Tao court was able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the other 5 great Tao courts and be listed amongst the 6 great Tao courts was because of the black-yellow Tao steel. And what sort of Chaos Treasure would appear in the ancient immortal forbidden area this time? Without a doubt, this was the focus of all the people in the starry sky. Even an emperor like Tai Shu Hong couldn't help but be tempted by it. Go. Remember, no matter what happens, it must be handled according to the rules of the Tao Discussion Grand Meeting. Within the grass hut, the old man in a Taoist robe spoke in a solemn tone. Chapter 2023. In the sky, a treasured vessel was teleporting and flying. On the vessel, Guan Su had arranged a banquet and invited Lin Sun and the others to drink and chat. The Middle-earth Prefecture has always been known as the place where emperors gather, the place where Tao fathers live in seclusion. A figure like me isn't sufficient at all after arriving there. Guan Su sighed with emotion. It's extremely prosperous and prosperous. Not only are there numerous powers there, but experts are numerous like trees in a forest. Any one of these powers is an overlord in any other prefecture. Lin Sun and the others listened silently, and they couldn't help but have their thoughts wander. The Middle-earth Prefecture, the heart of the prehistoric world, the most prosperous Taoist land in the starry sky. According to rumor, the territory of this prefecture was boundlessly vast, and it was utterly immeasurable. If the other prefectures of the prehistoric world were compared to numerous lakes of different sizes, then the Middle-earth Prefecture was a vast ocean. After the Tao discussion ends, all of you can travel around the Middle-earth Prefecture if you have the time and experience the prosperity and brilliance of this Taoist land. This is bound to be immeasurably beneficial to all of your future cultivation. Guan Su was like a benevolent senior as he chatted with Lin Sun and the others without putting on any airs. Lin Sun didn't know what the others thought, but at least he had an extremely good impression of Guan Su. This was a senior that was broad-minded and magnanimous. Of course, the objective of our trip this time is the Tao discussion. Once we arrive at the Middle-earth Prefecture, I'll bring all of you to Azure Light Mountain at the first possible moment. The Dark Heaven Tao Court that awes the world resides there. At that time, all the most extraordinary figures at the peak of the Saint King realm in the world will gather there and participate in the Tao discussion like all of you. According to the information I obtained, the sect master of the Dark Heaven Tao Court, Senior Tai Shu Hong, will personally preside over the Tao discussion. When Guan Su spoke up to hear, many people gasped. Tai Shu Hong, an extraordinary figure that had already attained the Tao and become an emperor countless years ago. His name shook the starry sky and awed the world, and he possessed the title of Grand Emperor Tai Hao. I can foresee that when the curtains to the Tao discussion begin, there will surely be numerous Emperor Realm figures appearing as guests. Guan Su's eyes revealed a wisp of longing. Not only did a Tao discussion gathering gather countless peak-level Saint Kings in the world, it had also attracted numerous emperors to attend the ceremony. It could be said to be unprecedented throughout the ages. Boom! Suddenly, a wave of the sound of the air being torn apart resounded in the distance. Guan Su stopped talking at once. He stood up and walked out of the cabin with Lin Sun and the others. They saw a huge fire turtle dragon beast flying in the void far away, like a floating continent. On the back of the fire turtle dragon beast was a beautiful divine mountain with rows upon rows of palaces. Ha! Are you Dao Friend Void Observation? An extremely burly figure appeared on the fire turtle dragon beast, laughing out loud. So it's Taoist Sanya. Guan Su smiled and cupped his fists. Sai, it's more important to hurry on with our journey. I won't chat with you any longer. When we reach Green Radiance God Mountain, I'll look for you for a drink. All right, I'll leave first. The tall and sturdy figure bade farewell, then urged the fire turtle dragon beast to gallop away. He's the sect master of the #1 sect in the Star Continent, the Stellaris Battle Sect. Just like me, he's shouldering the task of leading the top 10 of the Star Continent to participate in the Tao discussion. Guan Su explained. Star State? I remember that the #1 person in the Star State is called Su Qingjian. She's fairy-like and beautiful, and is regarded as the #1 fairy in the Star State. Someone chuckled. It's a pity that we didn't get to see the elegance of this peerless beauty. Many people laughed along. At this Tao discussion, not only were there stars shining brightly, but there were also many peerless beauties on the starry sky ranking. 2 days later, the treasured ships sailed into the territory of the Central Continent. Unfortunately, in order to hurry on with their journey, Lin Sun and the others couldn't get a good look at the Central Continent. This is the void waterway that leads to Green Radiance God Mountain. Once you enter it, you'll reach the black-yellow celestial court within the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. In front of an ancient city, there were many divine rainbow tunnels floating. Guan Su pointed at one of the divine rainbows and said, Void Waterway. It was a path that was opened up in the world barrier. Once you entered it, you could directly reach your destination. Only colossal beings like the 6 great Tao courts and the 10 great war clans could set up such a marvelous path. If they used the teleportation ancient formation to move, they would have to change the ancient formation frequently. Not only would it consume a large amount of Tao gems, it would also be extremely troublesome to constantly change the route. After all, the Central Continent was too big. It seemed boundless. If they didn't use the Void Waterway, just reaching Green Radiance God Mountain would require them to travel day and night for many days. Let's go. Guan Su took out a mysterious black-yellow token and shook it lightly. The divine rainbow in the void instantly became beautiful and smooth, and a door appeared. With a swoosh, under Guan Su's lead, the treasured ship swept into the door and disappeared in an instant. In the void waterway, it was a different scene. It was as if they had entered a gray and hazy, chaotic world. It was also on this void waterway leading to Qingmong Divine Mountain that Lin Sun and the others saw many figures one after another. Some rode on huge treasured ships, some rode on huge beasts, some stepped on auspicious clouds, and some rode on treasures. Along the way, Guan Su kept greeting people and introduced them to Lin Sun and the others. They were all experts from other provinces in the primordial world like them. For example, the Nether Province, the Green Province, the Snow Province, and so on. So that fellow is Ming Qiang. There are so many people, and the aura of every single one of them is so terrifying. This is what I look forward to, isn't it? Lu Dubu, Wu Huang, Xie Yuhua, Wang Tu, and the others sighed endlessly with emotion. Along the way, they saw many dazzling figures from the various provinces, and every single one of them had a different bearing and aura. From the beginning until the end, Lin Sun watched silently, and he was actually extremely shocked in his heart. If they didn't participate in the Tao discussion this time, who would have imagined that there would actually be so many dazzling figures in the world? Boom! Suddenly, a rumbling sound resounded in this chaotic void waterway. An ancient bronze chariot galloped over from behind, and it emitted a rumbling sound that sounded like thunder. This bronze chariot was like the carriage of the gods of the primeval times. Divine light flowed, and the light of the Tao fluttered, and various phenomena of the great Tao surged into appearance. And what pulled the bronze chariot were 8 green, ferocious birds. Every single one of these birds had wings that were like clouds that covered the sky, and they had a single leg. Their entire bodies emitted boundlessly terrifying flames, and their auras were completely not inferior to quasi-emperors. The great primeval ferocious beasts, Bifong bird, and there were a total of 8 of them. But now, they only played the role of pulling the chariot, the 9 heavens chariot. This is the carriage of the ultimate demon, Sword Emperor. Many figures who were hurrying along revealed looks of shock at the same time. Some of the older figures who were leading the group even revealed looks of extreme fear, and without hesitation, they retreated to the side, bowed, and lowered their heads. The ultimate demon, Sword Emperor, the master of the 9 heavenly palaces of the Great Tao, one of the 3 great emperors of the demon Tao in the starry sky, and a terrifying existence that reigned supreme over the heavens. Although the 9 heavenly palaces of the Great Tao were not as powerful as the 6 major Tao courts and the 10 major battle clans, but because of the ultimate demon Sword Emperor, even powerful beings like the 6 major Tao courts and the 10 major battle clans did not dare to underestimate the existence of the 9 heavenly palaces of the Great Tao. It was not an exaggeration to say that the ultimate demon Sword Emperor alone supported the entire 9 heavenly palaces of the Great Tao. And now, seeing the appearance of the ultimate demon Sword Emperor's carriage, who would not be shocked, and who would dare to disrespect it? For a time, the surrounding area made way for an extremely wide path. Countless figures hurrying along retreated to the side, and the atmosphere was silent. At this moment, even Guan Su bowed and lowered his head and told Lin Sun and the others to tell them the identity of the ultimate demon Sword Emperor. How majestic! Lin Sun could not help but reveal a look of shock. It was just the appearance of a chariot, and there was no way to confirm whether the ultimate demon Sword Emperor was in it. But when it appeared, it was like the arrival of a king, and along the way, countless experts bowed their heads. The extreme demon Sword Emperor. What kind of terrifying existence was he? Suddenly, a strange look flashed across Lin Sun's eyes. On his body, a token that had been left aside for many years, and had almost been forgotten, suddenly glowed with a green light. The 9 heavenly palaces of the Great Tao was covered by a curtain, and the space inside was extremely large. It was like a magnificent, gorgeous palace. A beautiful and pure girl in white, with pitch-black eyes as bright as gems, held her cheeks with her snow-white hands and was lost in thought. The table before her was piled high with precious fruits and delicacies from the various worlds in the starry sky. Any single one of them could be said to be priceless, rare to the extreme, and it was sufficient to make some old fellows covet them. But now, these treasures had become the snacks of the girl in white. But it seemed that she was not interested in these snacks at all. What's wrong, little worm? Are you still thinking about that boy named Lin Sun? In the central seat, a middle-aged man in a cyan robe said helplessly. His figure was thin, his eyebrows were sparse, and his temples were white. Sitting casually, he gave off a kind of unruly and unrestrained feeling. As he spoke, he took off the yellow-skinned gourd from his waist and took a sip of wine, feeling rather complicated in his heart. After all these years, the one that little worm cared about the most was that boy in the ancient desolation realm. Over these years, in order to make up for the guilt he felt in the past, he had collected all kinds of treasures in the world and used all means for the good of his daughter. As long as his daughter made a request, he would absolutely agree without hesitation. But what made him helpless was that his daughter had always been thinking about that boy named Lin Sun. This made him, as her father, very jealous. Father, do you think Brother Lin Sun will participate in the Tao discussion grand meeting? The girl in white said in a clear voice. The cyan robe man rubbed the tip of his eyebrows and said, It's hard to say. That year I said I would take him to the ancient path of the starry sky to cultivate, but that boy refused. I even suspect that he is still in the ancient desolation realm until now. His voice stopped abruptly, because he suddenly saw that the clear, big eyes of the girl in white were full of tears, and she seemed to be very sad. The cyan-robed man instantly panicked. Until now, he had been arrogant, unrestrained, and unrestrained. He was afraid of nothing and looked down on everything. Chapter 2024. Little Worm, this kid might have already reached the ancient starry sky path. The middle-aged man in green said softly, "Think about it. Back then, he caused such a huge commotion in the Kunlun ruins. The entire ancient starry sky path was shaken." The girl in white took a deep breath and said, "Father, I'm worried about Brother Lin's son. That's why I miss him." The middle-aged man in green said, "When the trip to the Kunlun ruins ended, the path to the ancient starry sky path was heavily blocked. However, no one found the kid's whereabouts in the end. Moreover, no one in the entire starry sky has seen this kid. That's why I suspect that he might have returned to the ancient desolation region." The girl in white was stunned and said, "Father, are you saying that we have to return to the ancient desolation region if we want to see Brother Lin's son? Why don't we go now? I'm not interested in attending the Tao discussion grand event." The middle-aged man in green smiled bitterly and said, "Little Worm, it's not that I don't want you to see this kid, but the ancient desolation region has long been covered by the forbidden power. I paid a great price to bring you back from the ancient desolation region." The girl in white sighed and said sadly, "Then what should we do?" The middle-aged man in green was about to say something when a strange expression suddenly surged in the depths of his eyes. Swoosh! Almost immediately, a terrifying willpower silently swept out from the Nine Heavens chariot and enveloped the treasure ship where Lin Sun and the others were. Guan Su's body stiffened. He felt his blood run cold and found it difficult to breathe. He was shocked. Could it be the aura of the ultimate demon, Sword Emperor? At the same time, Lin Sun, Lu Dubu, Wu Huang, Xie Yuhua, and the others felt uncomfortable. It was as if they were being stared at by the eyes of God. They felt like all their secrets were being seen through. Their expressions changed at the same time. "I'm Guan Su from the Great Void Dao sect. Greetings, Senior. If I've offended you, please forgive me." Guan Su bowed and transmitted his voice. His heart was beating rapidly, and he was already sweating profusely. He was sure that the terrifying willpower definitely came from the ultimate demon Sword Emperor. He was one of the three emperors of the starry sky demon Dao, a supreme overlord who could stand on equal footing with the sect masters of the six great Dao courts. Even though he, Guan Su, already had 1 foot in the emperor realm, he felt as tiny as an ant at this moment. "What's the name of the first young man on your left? What's his background?" A voice sounded out in the hollow heart lake. It was faintly discernible like the sonorous voice of the great Tao, yet it carried a formless and supreme dignity. Guan Su's pupils narrowed, yet he summoned up his courage and said, "Senior, this kid's name is Jin Dui, and he's the first in the Cloud Prefecture's Tao discussion." That voice uttered an "O" before completely disappearing. At the same time, the terrifying aura that enveloped Guan Su, Lu Dubu, and the others also disappeared, causing their bodies to feel relaxed. Only Lin Sun's body was stiff, as if there was a sword on his back, because that terrifying aura was like a sharp blade that was sizing up everything around him, causing him to feel powerless like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. After a short while, a voice resounded within his heart. "Young man, I really look forward to your display during the Tao discussion." The voice lingered and then disappeared. Lin Sun was stunned. What did this mean? He looked up and saw that the ninth heaven chariot had already been pulled by 8 Baifeng birds and was rumbling away. "Let's go too." At the same time, Guan Su said with relief. He didn't dare to stay any longer and drove the treasure ship to move forward. On the ninth heaven chariot, the man in cyan said with a smile, "Insect, we don't have to go to the ancient wilderness anymore." The girl in white was stunned. Why? The man in cyan got up slowly and stared at his daughter. "I promise that you won't be disappointed in this Tao discussion." The girl in white thought for a moment, and her dark eyes lit up. She said excitedly, "Father, you don't mean that Brother Lin will appear in the Tao discussion, do you?" The man in cyan praised her in his heart. She deserved to be the daughter of Xia Xinglia. "Let's go and have a look." He laughed heartily. After hesitating for a while, the girl in white finally nodded. Has my identity been seen through? On the treasure ship, Lin Sun was surprised and doubtful. Anyway, at least there were no twists and turns, which made Lin Sun breathe a sigh of relief. When he was locked by the aura of Extreme Demon Sword Emperor just now, it was extremely torturous. He turned over his palm, and a verdant message talisman appeared. On the message talisman, there was a wantonly Taoist rune imprinted Xia. It was a word, but it was like an emperor descending to the ninth heaven, with a sense of disdain for the universe and awe. This message talisman was given by Xia Xiaochong's father, Xia Xinglia, in the ancient wilderness. Until now, Lin Sun would never forget that when Xia Xinglia left with Xia Xiaochong, he stepped into the sky and flew away. The power of the law of heaven and earth couldn't stop him from leaving. For the first time, Lin Sun deeply realized what it meant to pierce the sky. It also made him judge that Xia Xiaochong's father should be an emperor. And just now, when the ninth heaven chariot appeared, this message talisman given by Xia Xinglia suddenly produced a fluctuation. Then, the aura of Extreme Demon Sword Emperor shrouded over. Thinking of what Extreme Demon Sword Emperor had just said, Lin Sun couldn't help but think. This Extreme Demon Sword Emperor, could he be Xia Xiaochong's father? Thinking of this, he got up quietly and found Guan Su alone. He said, "Senior, can you tell me about this Extreme Demon Sword Emperor?" Guan Su thought for a moment and said, "Extreme Demon Sword Emperor proved his Taoism in the ancient times, and his combat power was unfathomable. His most famous battle was that he once challenged the demon court alone with a sword. At that time, there were 5 old monsters in the demon court, but without exception, they were all defeated by Extreme Demon Sword Emperor's sword. After this battle, the name of Extreme Demon Sword Emperor resounded throughout the world, and he was regarded as one of the 3 great emperors of diabolism. As for his origin, it can be said that there are different opinions. So far, there is no accurate statement. The world only knows that he is called Xia Xinglia. When hearing this, Lin Sun's pupils suddenly shrank, and he was shocked. Xia Xinglia, Xia Xiaochong's father, was actually the master of the 9 heavenly palace, the famous Extreme Demon Sword Emperor. Even with Lin Sun's state of mind, he could not help but gasp. This truth surprised him, and he found it hard to believe. After a long time, he finally calmed down a little and finally understood that Extreme Demon Sword Emperor should have recognized his identity through that green message talisman. Since Senior Xia Xinglia is here, is Xiaochong also with him? Lin Sun thought. Moreover, Senior Xia Xinglia should have also seen that once his identity was exposed, it would cause a great disturbance, so he did not recognize me. Get ready. We are about to reach Qingmong Divine Mountain. Suddenly, Guan Su said. A dazzling gate appeared in the depths of the void waterway that seemed to be filled with chaos. When Lin Sun and the others entered the door, the treasure ship immediately disappeared. Boom! There was a violent shaking, and the scene in front of them changed as if the stars had moved. When their vision cleared, a beautiful fairyland-like world was reflected in everyone's eyes. In the vast sky, auspicious clouds were rising, and the chi of chaos turned into wisps of mist, falling from the sky. On the earth, there were mountains and peaks undulating. Every mountain was beautiful, shining with divine light, exuding a primitive, ancient, vigorous, and sacred atmosphere. Just looking at it from a distance, Lin Sun and the others were shocked. This world was like the legendary fairyland. The air was filled with the breath of the Great Way, which could be clearly felt. As they breathed, the rich spiritual chi poured into their bodies like a sweet spring and spread to their limbs and bones, making them feel like an immortal. Qingmong Divine Mountain. It was said that at the beginning, this world was an unknown place. Later, it was discovered by the founder of the Black-Yellow Taoist court and obtained the Black-Yellow Taoist tablet, a treasure of chaos born in this mountain. Since then, the Black-Yellow Taoist court was established. Since then, the Qingmong Divine Mountain had become a well-known place of the Taoist court, which had existed for countless years. At this time, Lin Sun and the others were located outside the gate of the black-yellow Taoist court. But even so, the scene in their eyes was already spectacular. Come with me. Don't act without permission. After putting away the treasure ship, Guansu landed with Lin Sun and the others and came to a mountain gate. Here, many figures had already gathered. Like Lin Sun and the others, they were the top 10 people from other states in the primordial world. Taoism friends from Cloud State, please wait here. A young man in black clothes from the black-yellow Taoist court waved in the distance. His attitude was neither cold nor indifferent, neither humble nor arrogant. Thank you for your guidance. Guansu cupped his hands and walked over with Lin Sun and the others. He was the leader of the first orthodoxy in Cloud State, but in the face of a disciple from the black-yellow Taoist court, he showed great respect. From this, it could be seen how transcendent and terrifying the status and power of the black-yellow Taoist court was. You wait here for a while. When all the Taoism friends from the 48 states arrive, I will arrange a place for you to stay. The young man in black clothes told them and left in a hurry. In front of the mountain gate, the strong people from all states were looking at each other and discussing something in a low voice. Similarly, Lu Dubu, Xie Yuhua, and others were also looking at the other people present to identify each other's identity and origin. Especially the first person in the discussion of Tao in each state. He received a lot of attention. Look, that person should be Jin Duyi, the first person in the discussion of Tao in Cloud State. Even Lu Dubu was suppressed by him. Jin Duyi, the name sounds overbearing, but why does he look very low-key? All kinds of discussion sounded. Lin Sun didn't care about the eyes and discussions from all around, and his state of mind was not affected. Suddenly a laugh sounded. Haha, it's a small world. Miss Xianyue, we meet again. Chapter 2025. The young man in linen was lazy and sloppy. It was Xian Jiuyin, the young man who had crossed the starry sky, with Lin Sun and Jin Tian Xianyue on the boat. It's you? Jin Tian Xianyue was stunned, but she was not very surprised. Because from a news she had inquired before, she knew that this playful guy was now the first in the Tao discussion competition in Tongzhou. It was not surprising that he came to participate in the Tao discussion grand conference. Miss Xianyue still remembers me. The young man in linen smiled and seemed very enthusiastic. Well, I remember that you acted with Brother Yuxian. Where is he? As he said, he began to look at Lin Sun, Lu Dubu, Wu Huang, and others. Child Yuxian is not here. Jin Tian Xianyue said. The hemp-clothed youth responded with an "oh," and suddenly transmitted his voice with a smile. When we were on the boat, I saw that Yuxian had disguised himself. Now, he should have appeared with another identity. If I'm not wrong, that Jin Duyi over there is that fellow? Jin Tian Xuanyue's clear eyes were fixed. However, before she could speak, the young man in linen clothes waved his hand and said, There's no need to explain. It's fine so long as I'm clearly aware. Right? Help me tell him that we're a group during the Tao discussion. So unless it's a spar according to the rules, otherwise we can't kill each other. As he said, he smiled and nodded to Lin Sun, who was not far away, and then turned away. Jin Tian Xianyue frowned. Was this guy testing, or had he really guessed Child's identity? Child, just now. Immediately, she told Lin Sun what the young man in linen had just said. Lin Sun thought for a while and said, This guy should have no evil intentions. Don't worry. Jin Tian Xianyue nodded and couldn't help asking again. Child, are we really going to ally with that guy? Lin Sun said casually, Let's play it by ear. As time went by, more and more strong people came to Qingmeng Mountain, and almost all of them were the top 10 figures in Hongmeng World. Isn't it said that some peerless geniuses from other worlds will also come to this Tao discussion grand conference? Why haven't we seen them yet? Someone muttered. These peerless and monstrous geniuses are brought along by their seniors, and they've arrived here a long time ago. There's utterly no need for them to undergo any Tao discussion selections before they can directly participate in the Tao discussion. They aren't the same type of people as us. Someone's tone was sour. For example, the people present here could be considered to be the most dazzling group of geniuses in the various provinces. Not only did they possess extraordinary backgrounds, they were outstanding figures amongst their peers, and they were extremely dazzling. But before this, he'd experienced numerous elections in order to seize the qualifications to participate in the Tao discussion. In comparison, those peerless, monstrous geniuses from other worlds in the starry sky had such qualifications without having to go through the selection process. This naturally made people feel very unbalanced. It's not just them. Aren't the heirs of the 6 great Tao courts and 10 great combat clans able to participate in the Tao discussion event as well? If you're disgruntled in your heart, then you could defeat them one by one during the Tao discussion. Only in this way would you be able to prove yourself and not make sarcastic remarks. While they were discussing animatedly, a voice that was piercingly cold like ice suddenly resounded. Who's not convinced? Step forward. His words caused everyone to look in the same direction. A figure had suddenly appeared before the ancient entrance, and he had his hands behind his back as he swept everyone with his gaze. This was a man with an extremely slender figure. He wore multicolored clothes, a cloud crown on his head, and a bright golden jade belt around his waist. His handsome face carried a wisp of undisguised ridicule and iciness. He stood there by himself while his entire body was enshrouded by multicolored and resplendent light, and he revealed an unparalleled, elegant bearing and arrogance. Kong Zhao. It's actually him. Could it be that he really intends to make a move before the Tao discussion event? A wave of restlessness arose in the surroundings. Many of the dazzling figures from the various provinces revealed solemn, fearful, and shocked expressions. Kong Zhao, the 5th on the King's Sage rankings, the core disciple of the primitive Tao court, and the most dazzling star in the younger generation of the imperial clan, the Kong clan. A very long time ago, he was a peerless genius whose name shook the starry sky, and he was looked up to by countless people of the same generation. When they saw him make an appearance, it instantly caused everyone to recall something. A few days ago, there was news that said Kong Zhao had threatened to make the number 1 figure of the various provinces in the world lower their heads before the Tao discussion event. Obviously, Kong Zhao's appearance at this moment seemed to confirm this news. For a time, the sounds of discussion in the surroundings had vanished, and it had actually become perfectly silent. The expressions of the great figures who led the experts of various provinces also changed. They didn't expect that Kong Zhao would appear in advance before they entered the mountain gate of the black-yellow Taoist court. Lin Sun glanced at this person with an indifferent expression, but he thought of another matter in his heart. When he was on a rocking boat, he had indeed killed many experts of the imperial clan of the Kong clan. Even after arriving at the primordial world, Kong Yu, Kong Yin, Chu Rao, and the others were also killed by him. However, at that time, he appeared as Yu Xian. No matter how suspicious Kong Zhao was, it was absolutely impossible for him to be suspected. Of course, it was impossible for Lin Sun to be afraid of this person. It should be known that the ancestor of the imperial clan of the Kong clan, the solitary sky demon emperor, who was regarded as one of the 7 primordial demon emperors, was still suppressed in his tower of Endless Way. Calculating the time, in less than a year, he would probably be completely refined and obliterated from the world. Seeing that no one spoke, Kong Zhao, who was standing in front of the mountain gate, looked more and more cold and disdainful. He said, "Wasn't there someone who was dissatisfied just now? Why doesn't anyone dare to fight now?" With a single sentence, he looked down on all the heroes present. Some of the top experts of various provinces revealed a cold expression, but before they could take action, they were dissuaded and warned by the great figures around them one by one, telling them not to be impulsive before the beginning of the Tao discussion conference, so as not to cause unnecessary trouble. After all, this was the black-yellow Taoist court. He, Kong Zhao, had the confidence to behave atrociously here, but they who came from other provinces did not dare to do so. This kind of people who only dare to talk about others behind their backs, but don't have the courage to stand out. Even if they participate in the Tao discussion conference, it is no different from courting death. Kong Zhao shook his head, revealing a look of disappointment. Today, he stood here to make all the provinces bow their heads. He originally thought that under his provocation, there would be people standing out angrily. Unexpectedly, No one dared to answer. They seemed to be no different from all bowing their heads, but made Kong Zhao feel quite bored. Fellow Taoist, the Tao discussion hasn't begun yet, so it's a bit too early to speak about all of this now. Finally, someone couldn't help but speak. At the very least, I know that these fellow Taoists aren't afraid of trouble, and they just don't want to cause trouble before the Tao discussion conference begins. It was a handsome man with a gaze that was like bolts of lightning, and his words could be considered to be courteous, causing many people to nod. Cause trouble? Ha! All of you are just afraid. Kong Zhao started laughing with an ostentatious bearing. How about this? If any of you think you have the strength to defeat me, Kong Zhao, then feel free to come at me. I guarantee that no matter if it's the primordial Tao court or my Kong clan, neither of them will look for trouble with all of you. His words were resolute and extremely domineering. This caused many experts to be moved. They were indeed only afraid of Kong Zhao's identity. I'm fighting from a Swallow Prefecture, and I'm willing to seize this opportunity to spar with fellow Taoists. A jade-robed man stood out, and he was handsome and possessed an extraordinary bearing. The spirits of many were refreshed. He finding the third in the Swallow Prefecture Tao discussion, a peak Saint King at the perfection stage of the absolute Saint King realm, and he was reputed to be the #1 Saint King in body refinement in the Swallow Prefecture. Finally, someone stood out to strike a blow against Kong Zhao's arrogance. All the experts from the various prefectures were looking forward to it. For a time, he findings seemed to have become the focus of attention. Lin Sun also revealed a look of interest. One was ranked 5th on the All-Heaven King Sage list, and the other was ranked 3rd in the Tao discussion conference. Such a battle was utterly impossible to see. 3 moves. Kong Zhao sized the finding up, and then he stretched out 3 fingers. If I can't suppress you in 3 moves, then I, Kong Zhao, will leave immediately and withdraw from the Tao discussion conference. Hiss! A wave of gasps resounded. This Kong Zhao is too confident. To he finding, Kong Zhao's words were simply like a great humiliation, and it caused his face to turn gloomy. He wants to defeat me in 3 moves? How arrogant! Right at this moment, Kong Zhao attacked brazenly, and his figure suddenly vanished on the spot. In the field of vision of everyone, they could only see a colorful divine ray of light flashing in the void. In the next moment, he'd arrived in front of He Finding, and he pressed his palm forward. The first move, bang! As he pressed his palm forward, the 5-colored light condensed into a dazzling divine seal, giving off an earth-shaking roar. He Finding's pupils shrank, and he tried his best to resist it. But the next moment, he was sent flying backward and fell in the void dozens of meters away. He coughed up blood, and the nearby void collapsed and the ground cracked. Many people's expressions changed. Dazzling figures like them were all experienced in battles, and they had sharp eyes. They could tell at a glance that He Finding was not caught unprepared, but was heavily defeated in a head-on confrontation under the condition that he was prepared for it. Seeing this, Lin Sun also made a prediction in his heart. If it's really a life-and-death battle, I'm afraid He Finding won't be able to resist even 1 move. It seemed to confirm Lin Sun's inference. In the second move, He Finding resisted with all his might, but he was still defeated. His whole body was smashed into the ground, and his face was covered with dirt, and his body was twitching. He was completely powerless to resist. In the third move, Kong Zhao stepped on He Finding's head. At this moment, the whole place fell into a dead silence. Even if it was the #1 expert in the Tao discussion, his expression had become extremely heavy, and his heart was like a tempestuous storm that was impossible to calm down. He Finding was ranked 3rd in a state. How powerful was he? But in the battle with Kong Zhao, he was absolutely crushed. There was no doubt that if Kong Zhao wanted to, he could kill He Finding on the spot as long as he exerted force with his toes. At this moment, looking at Kong Zhao, who was standing proudly like a god on He Finding's head, everyone deeply realized how important the #5 on the All-Heaven King list was. This is the #3 in a state? He's really weak. Don't show up in the future, lest you make a fool of yourself. Chapter 2026. Outside the mountain gate, it was silent. The dazzling figures from various provinces all looked gloomy. Kong Zhao's strength made them tremble and horrified, and his disdainful words made them very uncomfortable. But obviously, Kong Zhao didn't care about it all. With a bang, he finding was kicked away from the ground. Then he said slowly, "Is there anyone else who is not convinced?" Yes. A man in black stood out, looking angry. "Are you ranked first in a province?" Kong Zhao asked. The man in black's face suddenly turned red. Kong Zhao laughed and shook his finger, saying, "You have no choice because you are not qualified to challenge me." Speaking of this, he seemed to think of something and suddenly asked, "Who is Jin Tian Xianyue?" Whoosh! On the side of Yinzhou, Xiehua, Wang Tu, and others all looked at Jin Tian Xianyue. At the same time, Jin Tian Xianyue walked out and said indifferently, "Do you want to compare notes with me?" She looked cold and as beautiful as a fairy. As soon as she stood out, she attracted many people's attention. Compare notes? No. Kong Zhao's gaze swept unbridledly across Jin Tian Xuanyue's graceful figure. Even though my clan brother Kong Yu is very unbearable, he is still a member of the Kong clan after all. However, he was killed by a fellow called Yu Xian. You should be aware of this, right? Lin Sun raised his eyebrows imperceptibly. He didn't expect that Kong Zhao would mention this matter at this moment and point the spearhead at Jin Tian Xianyue. Jin Tian Xianyue said indifferently in a clear voice, "I know. I can only say that it's good that your younger brother died. If he is still alive, I don't know how many troubles he will cause for your Kong family in the future." Others feared Kong Zhao's identity, but as a descendant of the primordial White Emperor, she did not fear this. "I don't care about it." But Kong Zhao's eyes were cold. "I just want to know where Yu Xian is." Yu Xian? Most of the people present were confused. Only those experts that came from the Azure province vaguely remembered that there was an expert called Yu Xian who killed Kong Yu and his group outside the Azure province's Linen City some time ago, and it caused a great uproar. It was obvious that Kong Zhao was talking about Yu Xian. Ridiculous. How could I possibly know where Yu Xian is? Jin Tian Xianyue sneered. Kong Zhao's expression turned cold. "Do you think I don't know that you, Jin Tian Xianyue, were together with Yu Xian? If you don't give me an explanation today, then don't blame me for crushing you before this Dao discussion gathering." His words were filled with killing intent. Suppress? You could try. Jin Tian Xuanyue's eyes also turned cold, and he didn't give in at all. At this moment, even Void Master Guan felt it was extremely troublesome, and he had a huge headache. He didn't know how to resolve this dispute before him, because one was a descendant of the Wilderness Dao Court, a descendant of the Imperial Clan Kong clan, and the other was a descendant of the primeval White Emperor. Both of them were figures that couldn't be provoked. Lin Sun had been watching coldly from the side. When he saw this scene, killing intent flashed in his heart, and he completely sentenced Kong Zhao to death. However, at this moment, Kong Zhao chuckled and said, "This is before the Yellow Heaven Dao Court. Because of a grand event of Dao discussion, all the gazes in the starry sky have gathered here. If you, Jin Tian Xianyue, are suppressed here, then you'll lose a great deal of face. At that time, your Jin Tian clan will probably be humiliated because of you." This was an undisguised threat. Jin Tian Xianyue said indifferently, "I only know that Kong Yu is dead, but you, Kong Zhao, can't even find the murderer. You only dare to clamor and act wildly here. You've completely lost the face of your Kong clan." What a sharp tongue. Kong Zhao's figure suddenly disappeared on the spot, and he actually attacked without hesitation. In the next moment, he appeared in front of Jin Tian Xianyue. His palm and fingers were like claws, and they transformed into 5-color divine rainbows that enveloped down like a colorful and dazzling net. Fast, unbelievably fast. Many people's expressions changed. Previously, He Finding, who was ranked third in the Dao discussion gathering in Yin province, was powerless to resist and was easily suppressed. At this time, how could Jin Tian Xianyue, who was ranked 7th in Yinzhou, resist Kong Zhao's suppression? Unfortunately, everyone ignored one point. Jean Tian Xuanyue's seventh place was completely drawn by luck, and it did not match her own strength. More importantly, she was ranked 49th on the All-Heaven King Sage list. Clang! In front of Jean Tian Xuanyue, a white sword swept out like a cold light that shocked the nine heavens. Under the slash, Kong Zhao's attack was easily resolved. However, Kong Zhao's expression was calm as he sent out another palm strike. Boom! When this palm condensed, it was like a five-colored seal in the hand of a heavenly master had descended to the world, and it emitted a world-destroying, killing power. Jean Tian Xuanyue's clear eyes narrowed, and her body felt cold, just as she was about to dodge. Then, a sharp light suddenly appeared, condensed to the extreme, fierce to the extreme, bright and dazzling. Many people couldn't open their eyes, and they felt a stabbing pain. After that, a deafening rumble resounded. The five-colored palm was penetrated, and then it suddenly exploded into a rain of light that rained down. Then, with a muffled groan, Kong Zhao, who was as powerful as a god, stepped back a few steps, and bright red blood flowed between his palms and fingers. Only then did the people in the field notice that there was a figure standing in front of Jean Tian Xuanyue. He was dressed in a moon-white robe, and he was handsome. It was Lin Sun. It's him, Jean Dui. How dare he intervene in this matter? Amazing. Caught off guard, even Kong Zhao suffered a loss. There was an uproar in the field, and all eyes were focused on Lin Sun. They were full of surprise. They didn't expect that he would intervene. Jean Dui, the champion of Yinzhou? Kong Zhao said. At this moment, his eyes were surging with burning divine light, and his killing intent soared to the sky. His whole body was terrifying. Under the gazes of everyone present, he was actually injured, and a sword mark was torn between his palms and fingers. This caused him to be furious. Lin Sun said indifferently, "Your enemy is Yu Xian, not Miss Xuanyue, yet you target her like this. Don't you feel ashamed?" Lu Dubu, Xie Yuhua, and the others were surprised. In their impression, Jean Di had always been very silent, and he seemed to not care about anything. But at this moment, he actually took the initiative to attack, and he wasn't afraid in the slightest when facing a terrifying figure like Kong Zhao. Ha ha, who do you think you're to teach me a lesson? Kong Zhao laughed out of extreme anger. He took a step forward and revealed his killing intent. Since you meddled in other people's business, then you must pay the price this time. Bang! Behind him, red, green, black, white, and yellow divine lights flashed up. They were misty and flowed, and they were enshrouded in a dazzling and resplendent glow. This was the power of the Imperial Kong clan's innate bloodline, five-color divine light. According to legend, the original body of the Imperial Kong clan's ancestor was a five-colored peacock. He controlled five-color divine light, and he could destroy all kinds of treasures with a light swipe. It's over. Kong Zhao is angry. Even if Jean Dui doesn't die, he will be heavily injured. Many people felt a chill in their hearts, especially Guan Su. He was extremely anxious. He had an extremely good impression of Lin Sun, and he originally thought highly of Lin Sun. He even hoped that Lin Sun could shine in the Dao discussion and win glory for the cultivation world of Yinzhou. Who would have thought that such a great disturbance would occur before the Dao discussion began? Among the people present, only two people were the calmest. One was Jean Tian Xuanyue. She knew Lin Sun's background the best. The other was the youth in linen, Xian Jiuyin. Since Lin Sun took the initiative to interfere in this matter, he immediately confirmed that this brother was definitely Yu Xian. Therefore, when he saw Lin Sun and Kong Zhao fighting, there was only a sense of excitement and expectation in his heart, and he wished that the world would be in chaos. Because he knew too well how fierce this brother was, and his method of pretending to be weak was better than anyone else. But before this battle broke out, a deep voice resounded. "Kong Zhao, we are guests. How can you make a big fuss here? Come back quickly." These words resounded between heaven and earth, indistinctly like the sound of the Great Way. Everyone looked solemn, and a sense of awe rose involuntarily in their hearts. The owner of this voice must be in existence in the Emperor realm. Kong Zhao stopped, and his expression was uncertain. After a moment of silence, he stretched out his hand and pointed at Lin Sun, saying, "I will kill you in the Tao discussion." He enunciated each word with a pause, and his killing intent boiled. After saying that, he turned around and left. Watching his figure disappear in the mountain gate, everyone present breathed a sigh of relief in unison, as if a stone pressing on their hearts had been removed. In fact, the pressure brought to them by Kong Zhao before was indeed too great. He was just one person, but his wild and arrogant power made it impossible for anyone to ignore him. Jin Di is lucky. He made Kong Zhao suffer a little loss, and luckily avoided a dangerous killing. Many people sighed with emotion. They didn't know that Lin Sun was also a little disappointed at this moment, because he was ready to deal with Kong Zhao, but he didn't expect that an accident would happen. The teenager in linen was also very disappointed. He couldn't help muttering, "I don't know which old guy is so disappointing." He didn't speak earlier or later, but at this time, some strong people nearby were stunned and speechless. Who is this guy? How dare he complain to an Emperor Realm figure from the primitive Taoist court? But the teenager in linen didn't care about this. Not only was he not afraid of people like Kong Zhao, but he also didn't care whether his words would offend an Emperor Realm figure. Because his surname was Xian. A surname was enough. Lin Sun also heard the murmur and couldn't help glancing at the teenager in linen. Why did this guy like to watch the fun so much? Noticing Lin Sun's gaze, the teenager in linen smiled and waved his hand. "Dude, you were really awesome just now." Lin Sun directly ignored him. He had roughly judged that the teenager in linen must have confirmed his identity. Of course, the identity he recognized was Yu Xian, so Lin Sun didn't worry about anything. In addition, he had another identity. One was Lin Daoyuan, and the other was his real identity, Lin Sun. At the same time, inside the mountain gate, with Kong Zhao's departure, some people who had been staring at the movement outside the mountain gate withdrew their eyes one after another. On a rock inside the mountain gate, a man with a long sword on his back squatted. His long hair was loose, and his clothes were open, looking unruly. He said while drinking from a wine gourd, "Jin Di is a little interesting."